So let's talk about shuffles. Shuffles are basically ways to randomize the order in a deck of playing cards, right? And this is going to detail only like legitimate shuffles, right? So if you're coming in here trying to learn like false shuffles or whatever, right? That I'm not going to teach that for this video. I mean, just real shuffles are going to take me like forever to teach, so you know, that's gonna be for another time. And I don't really do that many false shuffles anyway, so I don't really feel qualified to touch on them. But yeah, so this is gonna be my longest video yet, and it's actually filmed over a couple of days. In fact, this intro is actually filmed the day before the video is supposed to be like released, so that's probably not a good thing, but I deleted the intro video somehow, so you know, I'm refilming it. Yay me, I guess. But yeah, the reason why I'm doing it is that we as magicians are always stuck in this context of, you know, overhand shuffles, Faro Shuffles, Riffle Shuffles, and you know, it's not bad because they show like some sort of like disorder, like chaos or disorder, right? But yeah, there's just way more shuffles out there that I think we could really benefit from, you know, just trying to break out and, you know, use them, right? Because each of these shuffles have their own advantages and disadvantages, right? And they also have their own set of properties, which I think make them really unique, right? For lay people, if you just happen to stumble upon this video, you know, you can learn a bunch of cool and interesting shuffles, or you might happen to find like really boring shuffles. Yeah, they're both over here. There's like boring shuffles in the beginning, and then, you know, more complex stuff near the end. So yeah, and the main reason why I'm doing it is because Biz, a Romanian cardist and magician, happened to tell me, you know, hey Curtis, you should probably do some more like long videos to, you know, teach everything all at once. And I was like, ah, fine, I guess I will. So, you know, that's that. But besides that, yeah, hope you enjoy the video. Each shuffle will be its own sort of like mini video. So video. I don't know why I don't know why I distorted that, but video. So yeah, so. So let's talk about the easiest and probably the shuffle that everyone knows about, and that is the casino wash. So if you don't know what the casino wash is, or the Las Vegas wash, or whatever you want to call it, it's basically this shuffle that's extremely chaotic. It's basically you spreading the cards all over the table, and then you're just doing like this nice little washing motion, or whatever this is. But yeah, so basically it's a way for casinos to basically show honesty and maybe break up the patterns of a new deck. Because if you don't know, a new deck comes in this order, right? Ace of Hearts to King of Hearts, Ace of Clubs to King of Clubs, and then King of Diamonds to Ace of Diamonds, and then King of Spades to Ace of Spades. So that's the order when you turn a deck face up in a new deck. So we call that a new deck order. But yeah, so it is just to show honesty, because if you have like gaff cards, especially like one-way gaff cards, so just in case you have like a bump marking type of thing, or perhaps like a wedge stripper, then this does technically screw with the orientation a bit. So this does break up like sort of that prospect, right? But usually after a casino wash, so when you open up a new deck, you have a casino wash, and then they would gather up all the cards to do a shuffling sequence. This shuffling sequence can vary from place to place, but the general like structure of it is a riffle, riffle, box, and riffle. So I'll show the sequence right now. Right, so just as a hand view, this shuffling sequence is a riffle, another riffle over here, a box cut over here, and then another riffle, like so. Right, so that's the general shuffling sequence for a casino after you're done a casino wash and after you're done a maybe a game, right? So we only do a casino, well, they only do a casino wash after a new deck is opened. This sequence is can be varied. So I know Sal Piacenti and his associates do like to do a riffle, riffle, box, riffle, a series of strip cuts, and then one last cut. So I'll show it over here just in case, right? So it is a riffle, another riffle, a box, another riffle, a series of strip cuts, and then one last cut like so. So that's the thing that Salpiacenti does. It doesn't have to be the sequence that every casino does, but it is a sequence that is possible with the bare bones still being maintained. Now, just before I get into the actual shuffle itself, I do want to give a warning that it does require a rather big surface. So in my case, I do have a close-up pad. This is a large close-up pad. I know the video kind of makes it deceptive, but I do have a large close-up pad. Because if you don't have a large surface, you're just going to end up washing the cards on top of one another, and it doesn't really change anything. So I would highly recommend you have a bigger table when you do this type of shuffle. To start off with, you just basically need to create a big mess on the table. That's the general gist of it. There's two methods that I've seen. Basically, you just do a card spread, right? And then you just move the cards around. But, oh god, this is gonna be a pain to pick up. Or I've seen people like Jason Ladani, they do a card rows and then they just start swirling the cards around, right? But it doesn't really matter. You can do a card rows, but you know, I mean, if you're fancy, then you could do a card rows. But essentially, generally, yeah, I'll just teach you the card rows real quickly. The card rows is extremely easy. The card rows, essentially, you have your thumb over here. You're going to cross them. It doesn't really matter which side you're going to cross them, as long as they're crossed. And then you're going to place them around where the logo for the casino cards are. So around I want to say 5 centimeters off from the short edges of the deck. So you're going to place your thumbs over there. And then what's basically going to happen is that you're going to apply a bit of pressure as you untwist your thumbs, right? So I'll do that again. So you have your little crossy thumbs, you apply some pressure on the deck, and then you uncross them. And that gets you a nice little card rows like so. So when you're doing a casino wash and you're done spreading the cards out, what you want to do is that you want to bring the top cards into your left hand, and you want to bring some of the center cards into your right hand, and then you're going to basically swirl them around, basically creating a mess and basically twirling them into some sort of spiral. And you're going to repeat this, right, until you're happy with the state of the cards. And so yeah, it's basically just this messy washing procedure that sort of mixes the cards, breaks up the patterns, because you can see that the cards aren't really interlacing themselves. They're all becoming sort of blocks, sort of, right? You're moving them in blocks, so they're not that effective in terms of an actual shuffle, but it is highly effective when it comes to yeah, breaking up patterns, I guess. That's why casinos use them, I suppose. But yeah, so if you're in this position and you have all the cards gathered up, you can actually do something that's called weeding the cards. And as you're going to take a bunch of cards from the bottom of the deck, right? You're going to pluck them out of the deck like so, and you'll see that they're all pretty much maintained in this giant mess of a card here. And you're going to toss the top cards of this mess on top of this packet, and you're going to continue doing that until you have none left in your hand. And that is weeding the cards. And you can then continue this little washing motion, and then you can continue weeding out the cards, right? And then now comes the worst part of the casino wash, where you just have to square everything up, right? So in this case, I would need to toss this back in, but here I just gather up every single card, and then I just square everything up, right? So here, if it's sort of a mess, I would just gather them up, and then I would just, stroke the deck from right to left, just so then they're all squared, right? But yeah, so that is the casino wash with just a weeding action. Nothing too difficult. Again, it's pretty simple, but I did want to go over it just in case. And also I do have some additional information. So if you are a magician, you can actually use the chaos of the casino wash to your advantage. In this case, this actually allows you to show each and every individual card. So if you have a marked card, or a marked deck, or rather, or if you have a juice deck, it can show every single card. So this actually sort of allows you to spot the cards that you need a lot better than you would think. Obviously this won't work if you're in casino, but if you're a magician, you're performing, then this does allow you to have sort of an advantage that the chaos hides. But again, if you want to retain some stock and you want to get the audience involved, like, oh hey, like you can retain some cards under the guise of a shuffle as the audience members are washing the cards alongside you. So that can be just some general ideas. Don't do this at games or casinos, because I'm pretty sure you're going to get beaten up and sent 6 feet underground. So don't do that. But yeah, so in the case of if you're a magician or something, full deck order retention isn't necessary. So if any case, if like anyone is ever like doubting or ever saying like, oh, I don't know how to like falsify like this shuffle or something, again, most of the time you don't even need a false deck like false deck like shuffle, because again, you only need like a small stock of cards. Like usually gamblers, for example, need 4 cards, and magicians, for example, we only need 4 cards as well. And if we do need like a full deck retention, you would just use a cold deck. So generally, if you're looking to falsify this shuffle, just use a cold deck, or yeah, use the chaos to your advantage. Or, you know, you can go ahead and look at Gambling Sleight of Hand by Steve Forty, which is one of my favorite books recently and is phenomenal. I can't speak. Phenomenal. So you can go ahead and look at that. Yeah, so that's pretty much the only book that I know of that teaches like false casino washes. I'm pretty sure none of the other gamblers want to like give it away. But also, like recently, yeah, casinos are a lot more honest. Before, like casino washes would have been used. Like private games, I mean, I'm pretty sure like they would have cheated, right? But now for actual casinos, they won't do that. So yeah. But besides that, that's about it for the casino wash. Hope you enjoyed the casino wash. Nothing too difficult yet. But yeah, let's get into the next shuffle. So now to move on to our next shuffle, it's again sort of a messy sort of type of shuffle, but again, that's what makes it so easy, is that it doesn't really require any sort of actual skill to perform them, because they're all like hidden under chaos, right? So they're all messy type of shuffles. This next type of shuffle is called the Rosetta, or sort of the drop shuffle. For the general history of the shuffle, I believe that was first created or invented by someone by the name of Charles Nyquist. I think that's how you pronounce it, and also Jack Macmillan. It was published in a book called Sleights and Swindles, published back in 1981, but Leonard Green actually independently created something that's extremely similar called the Rosetta Shuffle, and I believe he first published this back in Green Magic Volume 4, 2003. Now, Leonard Green does it with, again, a card rose, but Charles Nyquist and Jack Macmillan does it with just a messy packet. So, basically sort of the same thing, but again, sort of different handlings in general. But with that history lesson out of the way, let's get into the general workings of the shuffle. So, I'm using 4 knees because this is a sort of Spanish type of shuffle, but yeah. So, just to begin, it doesn't really matter, but yeah, let's just start with the Charles Nyquist handling of the shuffle first. So how you do this is actually extremely simple. You just have half of the deck just dropped on the table, and the other half you just drop it on the table as well. Nothing too difficult so far. And then the very next thing they're going to do is you're just going to push the cards together. Yep, basically there's no really skill required. You just take your right hand against the long edge of the right packet, and then the left hand against the long edge of the left packet, and you just mash them together, right? That's basically it, right? And this will create chaos, right? So this is going to merge them both in a singular packet. And that is the Charles Nyquist drop shuffle. So nothing too difficult. I mean, you just have to make sure that you don't mash them too hard, so then the edges are damaged. But generally, that shouldn't be a concern. So with the Leonard Green variation with the card rows, right? You have a card rows like so, and then you do basically another card rows like so. So you have two card roses. Again, it's the same thing. Right hand on the right half of the deck, left hand on the left half of the deck, and you just mash them together just so then they're basically shuffled, right? And you have this nice chaotic pile that goes on, and then you can just square everything up, and that basically completes the shuffle. Nothing too technically difficult, but you know, it is messy looking, which I guess is something that you want for shuffling, but if you're trying to display skill, not really the best look. So for further resources on the what is it, the Rosetta Shuffle or the Drop Shuffle, obviously if you look at the work of Leonard Green, you have the Classic Green Collection, which is a DVD collection for Leonard Green. There he teaches a false version of the Rosetta Shuffle. If you look at Vernon Chronicles Volume 3 by Di Vernon and written by Stephen Minch, you again have something similar that's false. If you have Slightly Out of Order by Patrick Redford, I believe he teaches again a false Rosetta Shuffle, which is taken from Leonard Green. So not much different, but that's an option that you have if you don't have a DVD player or something along those lines. And then lastly, we have Arrangements by Leonard Green and presented by Eric Tate. So that's a Penguin Magic download that's dedicated to the Leonard Green style of magic. It's just very short, but he teaches the Rosetta Shuffle. So again, you could look at those 4 resources. And so yeah, that's it for the Rosetta Shuffle. Nothing too difficult, but again, it is something that people should take notice of because Leonard Green uses it for a reason. But Leonard Green is Leonard Green. If it doesn't fit your style of magic, then don't use it. But that is a style of shuffling that you can use. And if you're a layperson, the card roses make you look fancy, I guess. Alright, so let's move on to another messy, chaotic type of shuffle. This is far more, I want to say, effective compared to the other messy, chaotic shuffles, because these cards actually do sort of interlace, and you can see them sort of interlace more effectively, I want to say, but I don't know what I'm saying, but yeah. So essentially this is called the spread shuffle. And just for some history, historical background, or whatever you want to call it, this type of shuffle, as far as I know, was created by someone by the name of Paul Curry, and he first published it in Paul Curry Presents back in 1974. I actually own a book copy over there. So yeah, it was first published in Paul Curry Presents. I'm not sure if it's if it predates that, Generally, I think that all the signs point to Paul Curry being the first to do this type of shuffle, but again, I can't confirm it. That's the thing about Magic history, is that it's sort of hard to track things because of publication, and you know, you don't know whether notes existed before that. But yeah, that's whatever. But yeah, let's get into the shuffle itself. So the shuffle itself is relatively simple. It does require you to probably rotate the deck in a longitudinal fashion, like so. Next, you're going to basically break the deck in half. You're going to cut the deck in half, rather. So generally, I just like doing like sort of a casino style type of cut. So I approach this the top half of the deck with my ring finger and my middle finger, so this rests along the front edge of the deck. My index is just curled on top, and my thumb is just touching the back of the deck. And with this, I can just cut off half of the deck like so, and I just set it on the side of the bottom half like so. Next, you're going to need to spread both packets, and it's extremely simple. You're just going to basically just flatten out your fingers. So here I have it in this same sort of grip as the cutting motion. So ring and middle finger on the front edge, thumb on the back, and index curled on top, right? And I'm going to do this for both sides. And basically what I'm going to do is that I'm going to slowly flatten out my middle and ring finger as I move the deck backwards, right? And so I have this really basic spread, right? So I basically just flatten out my fingers as I move backwards, and this allows the cards to basically glide in a sort of spread, right? I do this for both packets, like so. Next, we're going to basically embody the Rosetta Shuffle by just mashing the two halves together. Yep, it's that sort of shuffle. But now if we actually look at how the cards are being mashed together, like so, you can actually see that they're actually sort of being interlaced together. And that's why this is like a more effective style of messy shuffle. I probably didn't do that all that well, but yeah, so let me just recap a bit after I'm done shuffling. Man, that's the thing about messy shuffles, that they're always like pain to pick up on. But yeah, so you're gonna start on the front of the spreads. You can't see it, so you're gonna start at the front of the spreads, and you're going to contact the front, the bottom cards of each spread, like so, with your right hand and your left hand over here. And what this allows you to do is that now you can just mush the two cards, the spreads together, right? Like so. Just like with a Rosetta Shuffle, except now you're doing it with a spread. So this allows you to basically somewhat interlace the cards together. And so yeah, if you do this, and now you just push the two cards, the two halves together. Halves, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, so this is another type of messy shuffle. Is it really meant to be a exact shuffle? Not really. It's just meant to be fair and look nice. But that's about it. But let's see how effective it is actually. So I'll just if I can get this deck to square up. But yeah, so it's actually not bad in terms of a actual shuffle over here. So yeah, so that is the spread shuffle. Nothing too difficult, but again, it is a messy type of shuffle. Messy type of shuffles aren't technically difficult. It just needs to look chaotic, and it just needs to look sort of nice. So if you want to know how to falsify this type of shuffle, you can go ahead and look at Talk About Tricks Volume 2 by Joshua J. It's under the name of Spread Shuffle by Andy Gladwin, and as far as I know, this type of shuffle is the exact same as Martin Lewis's A Falsified Spread Shuffle by again Martin Lewis, and Andy Gladwin's the exact same. So Martin Lewis first published that in Martin Lewis's Martin's Miracles in 1985. So that's 11 years after Paul Correa first published his shuffle handling. So yeah, you can go ahead and talk about Tricks Volume 2 if you can afford it. But it's yeah, it is quite expensive. But yeah, you can go ahead and look at that. But besides that, that's how you falsify the Spread Shuffle. And so yeah. Hope you enjoyed the Spread Shuffle, and that should be it for the messy type of shuffles, the chaotic type of shuffles. The next shuffle is going to be something that's less messy, so we're moving away from the messy and chaotic type of shuffles. We're going to move on to something that's a bit more refined. I want to say it's not really more refined, it's still pretty basic, but yeah, it's something that's mathematical in principle, so in nature, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so this shuffle is going to take a while to get through, like as in performing it. It's not like hard or anything, but method wise again. So this is simple, but just the process of shuffling does take a while, so bear with me the entire like explanation process or something like that. But yeah, so let's move on to the history. So as far as I am concerned, the Klondike Shuffle, also I forgot to mention, it was called the Klondike Shuffle. Did I say that? Kind of like the Klondike ice cream bar, but yeah. But yeah, so as far as I am concerned, the Klondike Shuffle was first published in the whole art and mystery of modern gaming exposed and detected. So that was written by an anonymous author, and it was first published in 1726. So again, this is an extremely old shuffle, but you know, it is it is, right? But yeah, so let's move on to the explanation for the Klondike Shuffle. So this is nothing that difficult, but you know, you do need to know a couple of things first. First, you need to know how to do a bill grip. So if you don't know what a bill grip is, it's basically your middle ring and pinky finger are going to contact the front edge of the deck. Your index is going to be curled on top of the deck, and your thumb is going to be lying on the back short edge of the deck, like so. So this is a bill grip, a standard bill grip. It's very relaxed, and so. Next, your middle ring and pinky from your left hand are going to contact the bottom card of this deck, right? And this doesn't really need to apply any sort of pressure or anything. The card can move through friction alone. Your index can also be contacting it. Personally, I don't really like having my index in there. I like it sort of free, but it doesn't really matter, right? So now your thumb is going to contact the top of the deck like so. And so this creates, yeah, so again, there's no pressure involved, it's just through friction. So what this allows you to do is now when you move your left hand to the left, through friction, both cards are going to be peeled off of the deck like so, right? And you're going to continue this peeling motion until you get through the entire deck. Oh, that's not good. And you're going to continue this until you get through the entire deck, right? So again, you can see that I'm peeling the bottom card with my middle ring and pinky finger, and the top card with just my thumb. And there's no pressure being applied. It's purely friction, right? I'm not applying any sort of pressure at all. And so yeah, that is the Klondike Shuffle. And then when I reach the last two cards, I just place them on top of the deck like so. So yeah, that's just the Klondike Shuffle. That's literally it. But to explain sort of the mathematical principle of the shuffle, I'll just explain like sort of like where the card goes, sort of like where the key card goes. So the bottom card stays on the bottom, but the top card of the deck goes to the second from bottom position, and the center card, the card in the center of the deck, so the 26th card actually becomes the top card. So that is the general mathematical principle behind the Klondike Shuffle. There's probably like a whole like formula behind it, but I don't want to get too much into that. So I just want to go over like the method for that. If you're curious about the method, if you're more curious about the mathematical side of the shuffle, yeah, you can go ahead and research that. But generally, I think people will only use it once for shuffling, not really for math. So that's that. Yeah, so let's go into some further reading on how to falsify or how to use the mathematical side of the Klondike Shuffle. So there were some dedicated notes for the Klondike Shuffle, but they're sort of out of print, so I can't really sort of use them, so I'll link to, and that is the Vernon Chronicles Volume 2, written by again Stephen Minch, and it's by Di Vernon, and we have Gambling Sleight of Hand by Steve Forty again. So yeah, so Klondike Shuffle, nothing too difficult, but it is something that everyone should know, just in case, right? And so yeah, that's about it for the Klondike Shuffle, and now we can move on to our very next shuffle. Next, I'd like to continue the series of mathematical in nature type of shuffles. So again, this is going to be called the Monge Shuffle, not the Monge. No, oh, wait, no, it is Monge. It's the Monge Shuffle, not the Monge Shuffle. Monge is eating, so it's Monge Shuffle. So the Monge Shuffle is again mathematical in principle, and yeah, it was first published or discovered by a mathematician, I believe, called well, Gaspard Monge. There we go. Sorry, I keep mixing up my French sounds for some reason these days. But yeah, it is published in Réflexions sur la tour des cartes by Gaspard Monge, and it is first published in 1773. And so yeah, let's get into the Monge Shuffle. So the Monge Shuffle is something that is rather simple, but I do again want to get into the nitty-gritty of the shuffle, right? Because that is necessary. But essentially, it's extremely simple. You're going to push off the top card, and you're going to pass it into your right hand like so. Next, you're going to push the top card again, and you're going to pass it either on the top or the bottom of the card that's already in the right hand. It sort of doesn't really matter, but personally, yeah, it doesn't really matter. But depending on where you place this card, the sequence is going to change, and the bottom card is going to change places. So for example, if I push if I place this this next card underneath of the card that's currently in my right hand, this is going to change the bottom card to the top of the deck, like so, right? So I'll just if I place this next card on top of the card that I currently have on top of my right hand, well, this is going to displace the bottom card to the bottom, so nothing really changes. So that is just the way that the Monge Shuffle works. But back to the shuffle. Next, you're going to have you're going to place this next card either on top or the bottom. It doesn't really matter, but for example, if I place it on top of the card that I currently have in my right hand, like so, next I'm going to push off the next card, and then I'm going to place it on the bottom of the packet that I currently have over here. Next, I'm going to push off the other card, and I'm going to place it on top, and then you're going to see that I'm going to alternate between top and bottom for single cards all the way through. And I'm going to continue this until I no longer have any cards in my left hand. So here, right? Oops. So also, just in case you're wondering how I'm keeping the cards on the bottom square with the rest of the deck, I'm actually just I'm pinching the deck with my index finger, like so. And as a card is passed over, I'm actually going to let it slide underneath of my index finger, like so, and my my middle ring and pinky finger are going to slide it against the rest of the deck, right? So this basically just whoop into it, right? So sorry for the sound effect, but yeah, so this is basically what's happening underneath of the deck. So nothing too difficult, but you know, it takes a while to get through, so I apologize if I have to go over it. But yeah, now the bottom card is on top, and so yeah. So that's about it for the Monge Shuffle. Nothing too difficult, but yeah, so again, depending on how you start the shuffle, the bottom card does displace, sort of. But one thing that remains consistent throughout the entire shuffle, even if you alternate like where the card goes, is that the top card does stay in the 27th position of the deck. And you're curious about the mathematical nature of the deck, of the shuffle rather, you can go ahead and look at the mathematical formula that's published on Wolfram Alpha. I can't understand it, or maybe I can, but like I don't put enough time into it. But it's a long formula on the Monge Shuffle. So I'll place it on the screen for now. It's from Wolfram Alpha, but yeah, it is really long. But again, most people don't even care about the mathematical properties of the Monge Shuffle. They just use it as a shuffle. So yeah, use it as a shuffle, use it as whatever. But yeah, so that is the Monge Shuffle. So this next type of shuffle is going to be called the Haymow Shuffle. Haymow, I don't really know how to pronounce it. But some types of false overhand shuffles were also called the Haymow Shuffle. So for example, the Milk Shuffle was also called this. So it does get sort of confusing, but just for this, we're going to be referring to the actual shuffle and not the false overhand shuffle type of shuffles, right? But just for the history of it, yeah, we don't really know a lot about this shuffle. Quite frankly, I mean, maybe I don't know a lot about it, but to quote the Encyclopedia of Magic and Magicians, which was published in 1988, quote, T.A. Waters, this latter procedure is said to be the oldest known method commonly used for shuffling cards, unquote. So this is an extremely old shuffling method, and unironically, apparently it's better than the overhand shuffle in terms of like how well it shuffles. But enough about that. Let's get into how we do the Haymow Shuffle. So the shuffle is extremely similar to the Monge Shuffle, except rather than pushing off one card, you're pushing off a bunch of cards. So here you're actually pushing off you're actually spreading off a clump of cards, and here you're going to basically grip it into your right hand. And the way that you do that is that you're just going to clip it with your thumb and the rest of the fingers, like so, right? Next, you're going to basically spread more of the deck, like so, and you're going to pass it on top of the packet that's in your right hand already. And then you're going to redo that, but now you're going to pass it on the bottom of the deck, like so. And you're going to repeat this alternating method, right? Until you get through the entire deck. And it is with packets rather than individual cards. So that is the thing that sets it apart from the Monge Shuffle, right? So you have a spread, another packet over here, like so, and then yeah, that's it for the Haymow Shuffle. Nothing too difficult, but again, it is necessary that you know this. But what makes this shuffle interesting is that you can actually mix it with the Monge Shuffle. So for example, if I pass a packet over here, I can actually give it like a few single cards, and then I could pass a couple, another packet more, pass a few individual cards again, and then do another Haymow Shuffle, Monge Shuffle, Haymow Shuffle, Monge, and then I could do that until I am through with the entire deck. So that's what makes this sort of interesting, I want to say. Now, for a false variation of the Monge Shuffle, you can go ahead and look at the Charlie Shuffle, which was actually by Charlie. So in case that you don't know Charlie, he actually made this, which is the one-handed pass or one-handed cut that most artists actually use and do every day nowadays. So yeah, that's an interesting fact. But yeah, so Charlie was born in the late 1800s, so just the fact that there's a false variation this early is sort of insane. But yeah, so if you want to learn more about the Charlie Shuffle, Erdnase, so SW Erdnase actually published a Charlie Shuffle in the Expert at the Card Table back in 1902. So again, very old work on this. But more recently, if you're looking for something that's more modern, I want to say, Jack Ty, the disgruntled puffin on Instagram, published a tabled version of the Charlie, which looks extremely fair and yeah, just overall just looks good. So if you're curious about some more recent work on the Charlie Shuffle, you could go ahead and look at that. But besides that, that's it for the Haymow Shuffle. Nothing hard yet. But yeah, it is something that's necessary, I think, as you progress and move on to the more complicated and the more technical shuffles. So yeah, that's it for the Haymow Shuffle. So now we're finally breaking through to the commonplace shuffle. So the shuffles that are still being used nowadays. So we're moving on to the Hindu Shuffle. So the Hindu Shuffle is a pretty popular shuffling method in Asia. I mean, I first saw it in a Yu-Gi-Oh anime episode, so that's interesting. I mean, they were shuffling cards with the Hindu Shuffle in the anime. So yeah, let's go into the history. So as far as I know, the name the Hindu Shuffle actually comes from the fact that Jean Hugard, who wrote Expert Card Technique, wrote the Card Magic, so all the mainstream magic books, actually saw a Hindu magician shuffle like that back in 1933, or maybe that was like 3 years before. I am not that sure. But yeah, he noted that in Card Manipulations number 1. So actually no, he actually named it that because he saw a Hindu magician shuffle like that 30 years prior. So back in 1903, but it probably existed for longer. So again, this is an extremely old shuffling method, and so yeah, it's a historical shuffling method. Now let's get into the Hindu Shuffle. So the Hindu Shuffle is nothing that difficult, but it does require a grip that is different from every other shuffling method that we've seen in general, right? Or with cards. So you're going to grip the bottom long edges of the deck. The right long edge you should grip with your middle and ring finger, like so. And the left long edge you should grip with your thumb. And your index is just resting on top while your pinky is probably just hanging by. So now you're stuck in this nice little grip with which exposes the majority of the deck, like so. Next, you're going to grab, basically sort of mirror this grip, right? So you're going to grab with your palm up the top packet of the deck with your left, middle, and ring fingers on the right long edge of the deck, and your thumb on the left long edge of the deck, like so. And your index is just sort of resting on the front edge of the deck, like so. And your pinky is just curled on the bottom again, like so. It is the grip that you should be in. And next, you're going to apply pressure with the fingers that are contacting the long edge, and you're going to basically peel off an indefinite amount of cards into your left hand, like so. And then because your index is on the front, it shouldn't go anywhere, and you should end up in sort of a dealer's grip, like so. And now that you've got your first packet in place, you're just going to repeat the motion. So, and then you're going to repeat this until you go through the entire deck, like so, right? And that is the Hindu Shuffle. So nothing too technically difficult, but there is a sort of rhythm to it. So if you notice the Hindu Shuffle, it is sort of rhythmic, where this hand moves backwards and sort of shuffles forward. So this moves back, this moves forward. So this does create a sort of rhythmic motion, like so, a circular motion. Personally, I don't really move my left hand, but I know some people who do. Some people prefer to do this, right? Some people only like to do left hand motion. So in this case, it's just this. But I do like right hand motion a lot better. So you can go ahead and do both. It doesn't really matter, but find the style that suits you. So there are a couple of further reading resources for the Hindu Shuffle. There's obviously Expert Card Technique by G. Newgard and Frederick Browie, Royal Road to Card Magic, Steranko on Cards by James Steranko, so he also wrote something on the Hindu Shuffle, Vernon Chronicles Volume 1, there's Card College Volume 1 as well by Roberto Giobbi, and then there's Mr. Jennings Takes It Easy by Larry Jennings and written by Richard Kaufman. So again, this is a pretty widely used shuffling technique. So yeah, learn it well, and there are a couple of applications that you should learn in the meantime. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of those shuffling applications, but if you do like them, then you know, use them. Go ahead, right? But yeah, so that's it for the Hindu Shuffle. And so yeah, let's move on to the rest of the shuffling methods. Now we are going to go over the most common shuffle, I guess, nowadays. So we're going to go over the Overhand Shuffle, and it's a shuffle that lay people use nowadays too. So again, it's an extremely common shuffle that everyone should probably know about. But one fun fact about the Overhand Shuffle is that it is actually an extremely bad way of shuffling cards. Someone did the math, and apparently it takes 2,500 overhand shuffles to fully randomize a deck of cards. And I'll go over why it's actually not the best way to shuffle cards a bit later, but generally it's yeah, it's not the best overhand shuffle. It's not the best shuffling method in general. Now for history, it's so old that I don't think there's any like definite publication for the Overhand Shuffle. As far as I know, there has only been methods. There's only been like uses for utilities for the Overhand Shuffle. So there hasn't been any book that I know of that probably describes the Overhand Shuffle as it is. It's always like for stacking, for controls, right? So it's always in magical contexts. So there's never been like a layperson publication of the Overhand Shuffle. So that probably makes it extremely old, less old than the Haymow Shuffle, but again, it is extremely old, and I can't find any publication for the shuffle itself. but it is extremely versatile, and earlier publications do show that magicians like it because of how versatile it is. But regardless, let's go over the shuffling method. So the shuffle is extremely simple, but there are two ways that you can get into it, especially if you're a magician. If you're a magician and you don't want to flash the top card, then you just if you don't want to flash like the bottom card or the top card, then you can vary it. But there are two ways. One is that you can actually curl in your thumb on the bottom of the deck, like so. And the very next thing you're going to do is you're going to kick the deck up, like so, right? You're going to just basically kick the deck up, and you're going to grab the deck into your right hand. Your method is the exact opposite. It's that you're going to curl in your middle ring and pinky finger, and you're just going to kick it into your thumb, right? So this, the deck is going to be clipped by your index and your thumb, like so, while your fingers are going to be curled in the bottom and just kick it upwards, like so. So depending on whether you want to flash the bottom card or the top card, or you want to like not like show it to the audience members, then you want to alternate between both, right? But that's not the main problem that's not a problem for lay people, but it is for magicians. So I thought it'd be probably better for us to take notice of. Now for the overhand shuffle grip, this is probably the most important part of the shuffle, and it is why it is so versatile. So for me personally, the overhand shuffle, I actually like to grip the top corners, so near so the short edges near to the top corners, right? So over here with my thumb and my middle finger. So this is extremely important, and my index is just going to be resting on the top long edge of the deck, like so, while my ring and pinky finger are just sort of resting on the side. Generally, it's just my middle and my thumb that are applying the most pressure, right? These are just there for support. So this is what it looks like without like the index, without the ring finger and the pinky. And so yeah, it can just be resting there. And the reason why I'm using this specific grip, and you'll realize that I'm gripping it by the fingertips, is that this opens up a huge amount of space over here, right? If I did it with my index, this actually closes the amount of space in between of the deck and my palm. So I want the most amount of space for sleights in general with the overhand shuffle. So in this case, I have my middle finger and my thumb. So this is actually the most amount of space that I can give for the palm, right? So here you can see that like if I have my index and my thumb, that's not a lot of space. But here, this is an extremely extreme amount of space. So that's why I grip the deck with my middle and thumb on the top edge of the deck, right? So this gives the most amount of space for my in between of my palm and of the deck, like so. Next, you're going to basically have you can have a bevel. Usually I would just bevel the deck. So this bevel allows you to basically grip a packet on top of the deck, like so. So this allows you to contact a packet with the bevel on the top edge of the deck with your left thumb. And you're basically going to peel a packet into your left hand, and this is going to remain perpendicular with the ground. So once you're done peeling this, it's basically going to be propped up in your left hand with your index, middle, ring, and pinky fingers, like so, right? And so now with this packet propped up, I can continue to peel off packets from my right hand, like so, right? And the bevel allows me to peel off a specific amount of cards if you so desire. So if I want to peel off one, then I can peel off one. If I can peel off two, then I can peel off two. And that's why the bevel is so important, right? Lay people don't really bevel the deck, but personally I love beveling the deck. So the kick up motion at the beginning actually allows me to bevel the deck in advance, right? So if I'm doing this, then you know the deck is pretty much already beveled. Or if it's not fully beveled, I can actually use my index finger to kick this deck into a bevel, like so, right? So I can just use my index to just slant the deck like so. And that is how I bevel the deck. But back to the shuffle, this bevel allows me to grip the amount of cards that I need, which is basically extremely important for false shuffles or anything, or maybe just like general shuffling procedure, right? So now that I have the bevel in place, I can just continue peeling off cards, right? It doesn't have to be packets. I can do like maybe like a packet, a few individual cards on their own, and maybe then I could do a packet again, and then individual cards again, and then a packet. So I can alternate between packets and individual cards like so, right? So really the only thing that's changing the amount of cards is probably where I'm applying the pressure. So if you notice with the bevel, I'm actually curling my thumb in a lot more than if I did for a single card. So if I'm doing a single card, I just keep my thumb straight, and this allows me to peel off a single card. But if I want to peel off a packet, I curl in my thumb slightly, and this allows me to contact more cards and allows me to peel off more cards into my left hand, like so, right? So on a moment's notice, I can change from single to packet, right? So packet, single, 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 packet, 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 single, 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 and then I could just throw the rest on top, right? So yeah, so as I am running through the deck, and as you can see, I don't have enough cards in my left hand, what I can do is that I can just toss these cards on top of the deck. And that's it for the overhand shuffle, right? It's nothing too difficult, but yeah, so the bevel is extremely important for me. And again, you should hold the deck by the fingertips, because this gives you the most amount of space, especially if you have like, I don't want to say like smaller hands, but I guess I do have like smaller hands compared to others. But yeah, if you have like, but yeah, you should give the most amount of space between your palm and the deck just for shuffling work. So yeah, that's it for the overhand shuffle. Now, what I meant by the beginning on why the overhand shuffle isn't necessarily the best shuffling method is that if you actually take a look, if I'm peeling off packets, right? If I'm peeling off packets and I do the same amount of chops, right? I'm basically undoing the shuffle. If you really think about it, right? Because at its core, if I do, like, for example, if I do 3 overhand shuffles, like so, right, and I do 3 overhand shuffles again, well, there's a chance that I can undo the shuffle. So it's basically not really that effective if you think about it, because well, for example, if there's a top card and I do 3 chops, for example, so 1, 2, and 3, and now I do the overhand shuffle again, right? 1, 2, and 3. And we look at the top card's position, right? Now it's in the center of the deck, right? There is a chance that it's in the center of the deck, but if I actually do the shuffle badly, there is a chance that it could end up near the top again, right? So now it's 3rd from the top, right? So there is a chance for you to undo shuffles in the event of an overhand shuffle, and in case that you are doing just solely packets, right? So it is ideal that you should alternate the amount of cards that you could do in each chop, or maybe like the amount of chops that you do for a shuffle, or maybe do single, do chops, and then alternate both, right? So that is how you can get a legitimate shuffle for the overhand shuffle. But yeah, so there's quite a few things they can do with the Overhand Shuffle, and that's why it's probably the longest segment. But you can do obviously controls, you can do reverses, you can do palms, you can do stack work, you can do peaks, you can do false shuffles. So there's a whole variety of things they can do, and there's obviously a whole variety of resources that you can read. So there's obviously Talk About Tricks by Joshua J that you can go ahead and look at. There's The Hermit Volume 1, Issue 7 by Scott Baird. There's Mr. Jennings Takes It Easy. Again, I said that for the Hindi Shuffle. The Boy Who Cried Magic by Andy Gladwin. The Expert at the Card Table by S.W. Ertnays. Encyclopedia of Card Tricks by G. Newgard and Frederick Browie. Expert Card Technique by those guys again. The Royal Road to Card Magic by those guys again. And Revolutionary Card Technique by Ed Marlowe. So there's a whole bunch of resources for you to read up on concerning the Overhand Shuffle. So it is really a versatile shuffle that you should probably get to know. Personally, you should take notice of the grip, and I think that's the thing that allows you to do all those versatile things about, right? Especially if you don't have like big adult hands. Gross. But yeah, so I was originally I was having trouble with some sleights because I didn't have enough space, and so I need to change the grip, and that involved like a change of habit. So yeah, if you learn the Overhand Shuffle, please take notice of the grip. And so and that'll save you a lot of time concerning some sleights, especially if you're younger and you need bigger hands, or like you need more space between the deck and the palm of your hand. So take notice of that, and that should be it for the Overhand Shuffle. Hope you enjoyed that, and we can move on to the very next shuffle. Alright, now we can get into the more technical side of shuffling. So this is going to be something that's still relatively simple, but it does require you to watch a prior video of mine, and that is the airing the deck and waterfall video. You only really need to know how to air out the deck. You don't really need the waterfall part, but you do need to know how to air out the deck. So again, you should go ahead and watch that. But if you already know the airing the deck motion, then feel free to watch this segment. But as far as I know, the side shuffle, so this is what this shuffle is called, is published in Card College Volume 4 by Roberto Giobbi, published back in 2000. Yeah, the year 2000, it's just 2000. But it might have been published earlier, because we know Roberto Giobbi and Card College, it's not really like original material, I want to say. So there's a high chance that this has been published before, and it hasn't been noted, so that's a thing. But I can't really confirm that it's been published before, so just in case, I'm going to put Roberto Giobbi Card College Volume 4 as the starting point for the side shuffle. But yeah, besides that, let's get into the shuffle itself. So for the side shuffle, it's nothing too difficult if you know how to air out a deck, or if you're already familiar with cardistry or cards. So here you're actually going to separate the deck into two, and so you're going to start off in a dealer's grip. You're going to curl in your index like so, and you're going to grab about half of the deck with your right hand in a biddle grip, right? Here you're going to actually require sort of assistance from your left hand, so you're going to stabilize it with your middle ring and pinky finger and your thumb as you air out this deck, right? This packet of the deck. So you air it out, but you don't air out this packet at all, right? This packet remains sort of squared, so you only air out the right hand like so. Next, you're going to need to sort of faro them together, but not really. So now that you've aired it out, you're basically going to approach the deck with the other packet like so, and you're going to sort of bevel it, right? And this bevel is attained by just using your thumb, and you're going to kick it over sort of in a slant like so, right? And with this slant, now you can basically saw the cards into the aired out cards like so, right? And this is a very gentle sawing motion, and you can see that I've actually successfully sawed the cards into one another. Now you can actually notice that the cards are in packets, right? They're not really in individual cards, so this isn't necessarily a Faro, but yeah, they are being placed in between with packets. So that is something that you should probably take notice of. But let's go over the shuffle once again, right? You have half of the packets, half of the deck separated, you air out this packet, and then you approach the deck with your left hand with the bottom right corner, and you're just going to gently rub the bottom right corner against the aired out deck, right? And this actually allows the left hand deck to separate into packets in between of the aired out deck, right? And that's basically it for the side shuffle. You just have to remember that it is extremely soft and that you shouldn't mash the corners together, right? Because if you mash it together, there are chances that you're going to screw up fray the edges of the deck. That's what I want to say. But yeah. So, just for reference notice, just for references, I said from the beginning, it's not really published anywhere. So if you do want to learn it, you should go ahead and learn it more in detail, I guess. Even though this is pretty detailed, but if you do want to have some more research done on it, you should go ahead and look at Card College Volume 4 by Roberto Giobbi. And yeah, in there he notes that it's actually good for preserving the bottom stock. So whether however you take it, yeah, you should play around with it if you want to know more about it. But yeah, that's about as deep as I'll go for the side shuffle. If again, if you're not familiar with the airing deck, I highly recommend you do it before you look at it before you go into this. And also, this might be a bit reliant on how cards are cut. So depending on whether it's a modern cut or whether it is a traditionally cut deck, that might affect it. I can't really confirm. Generally, the bevel should be enough, but if you're having trouble, then I highly recommend you look at the guide to playing cards to United States Playing Card Company playing cards video that I put out recently. So yeah, a few prerequisites here and there, but you know, generally if you have all those down, then this shuffle shouldn't be too difficult. And yeah, we can move on to our next shuffle. Alright, now we can finally get into a lot more technical stuff. I mean, I know I said that for like the Hindu shuffle, the overhand shuffle, but now it's really the part where it's the harder stuff, I guess. I mean, the Riffle Shuffle in the hands, or whatever you want to call it, I guess it's pretty basic. I mean, lay people know of it, but I've mostly seen just the Overhand Shuffle, unless like people actively try and look for Riffle Shuffle tutorials. But yeah, so the Riffle Shuffle, this sort of Riffle Shuffle can be done in the hands, and I've mostly seen this Riffle Shuffle being done in the hands. I've known lay people who don't necessarily know how to do it in the hands do it on the table. It doesn't really matter, but usually I think that if I were to do a Riffle Shuffle on the table, I would use a different method, but in the hands I think I would just use this, right? Now, history-wise, it's interesting because I actually haven't seen really like an actual guide or like an actual like section of a book dedicated to a real Riffle Shuffle. That's that, right? I mean, it's probably old, just like the Overhand Shuffle, but again, I can't give an actual date on where it comes from. There's there's parts of it like scattered throughout like magic books, but I can't necessarily give you a definite date on when it was created or like the first reference. I mean, the first reference I believe was from 1931, but that's a really late considering that Ernest was published in 1909. So I mean, it's just hard to know when this shuffle was created, and I don't have a definite answer. But on the side of history, and maybe as a fun fact, Percy Diaconis and Dave Bayer, I think, back in 1992 conducted a study on the Riffle Shuffle, and they said that after 7 Riffle Shuffles, every configuration, so that is 8 times 10 to the power of 67, is equally likely. So shuffling more doesn't really make the deck more random, and shuffling less still means that there are recognizable patterns in the deck, right? So I believe 5 shuffles you can still see recognizable patterns. 6 there's less, and then 7 they're mostly gone. But what every configuration is equally likely means that you can fall on the same patterns, right? So does it really make it more random? That's a debatable answer. But as for the history fun fact, that's all I'm going to say about it. But yeah, so let's talk about the enhanced Riffle Shuffle, which can also be done at the table. So the in the hands Riffle Shuffle, you can start off a couple of ways. Well, first off, you obviously need to divide the deck into 2, and you could do this a couple of ways. One is that you can start off in a billow grip in your right hand, and then you could begin riffling off about half of the deck, like so, right? And once you've riffled off half of the deck like so, you can then approach this riffled off half with your left middle ring and pinky, and then you're basically going to rotate this half into your left hand like so. So then it's sort of mirrored in the billow grip in your left hand as well. Now, I'll just put this half aside for now, and we'll focus on this hand. So, this grip is going to play basically an important role in how you Riffle Shuffle. Whether you have your index extended or whether you have it curled, it doesn't really matter, but you do need to apply pressure on this deck, right? On this on the center of the deck, especially if you're starting out. For me personally, I can just do this, but you know, preferably this looks better, right? If you have your index extended, this does provide a bit more cover for some moves if you're doing magic, right? But in the event where you're a layperson, then you could just curl in your index and it doesn't really matter. Having your index extended does add a bit more flair, but again, I don't really care, right? More flair, more cover versus normal, I guess. Now, for the grip, right, you're going to basically change it into a deeper billow grip. So here you have your billow grip, and now you're going to move this packet deeper into your hand, right, into your fingers. So whereas a billow grip would be at the fingertips like so, you're actually going to move it into maybe like the start of your second phalanx or whatever you want to call it, right? The second joint over here. So you basically want to move it over here. And now you're going to apply pressure with your index as you lift up the bottom, the back half of the deck with your thumb. And what this causes the deck to do is that this actually bevels this half over here. And this gives it the perfect opportunity to now roll your thumb around the back edge of the deck like so, right? So this rolls back, yeah, so basically this thumb rolls back, right? And as it rolls back, this allows cards to fall from the deck, riffle off of the deck, and this is what gives the Riffle Shuffle its name, right? You're basically riffling the cards, right? And notice that I'm basically, now my fingers are wrapped around the face of the deck, like so. And this is extremely important because if they're not wrapped around, if it's still like at the fingertips, these cards will dribble out, and that is not ideal. So preferably you want your fingers to have to be rolled to be wrapped around the face of the deck like so, right? And then as you riffle off, these cards will basically apply a bit of pressure, which will allow these cards to stay attached to the rest of the deck, right? So this is the only part that's like exposed out, right? So basically, I'll recap. So you wrap your fingers around the face of the deck, you apply some pressure with your index, and you lift up with your thumb, which creates this bevel, which grants you the opportunity to now roll your thumb around and riffle off the cards one by one like so, right? And you're going to do this with your left hand as well. So it's the same exact thing, right? Your fingers are going to be wrapped around the face of the deck like so. You're going to apply some pressure with your index, and you're going to bevel the top half of the deck like so. The back edge of the deck like so with your thumb. And then you can then roll off the back edge of the deck, which allows you to riffle off the cards one by one. And now you can actually combine these two motions together once you have this down. So now you can riffle off one card, riffle the next card, and then once you have this rhythm down, you can consistently riffle the cards together, which creates the Riffle Shuffle. So now you can see that cards are interlaced together like so, right? So if you're just starting, you can actually do the shuffle on the table, right? So for example, if I do this right on the table, I would riffle off one card, riffle off two, and then just do that, right? And in the event where the cards slide out of my hand, I still have a table to support the deck, right? So for example, if I'm riffling the deck and the cards accidentally fly out, I still have a table to support the shuffle. Now, if I'm trying to do this shuffle on in the hands, look at what happens. I can actually lay down a bed of cards first. So I can, so first off, to lay down a bed of cards, I riffle off one or two cards, and then I create this little bed over here, right, of interlaced cards. Sorry, let me just focus the camera real quickly. So I create this little bed of cards over here, right? So once I riffle off, a couple of cards from both hands. So now I have this nice little base. So this confirms that, you know, the deck is stable and won't go anywhere. And now when I have this bed of cards in place, I can now continue the rest of the riffle, which provides me the necessary support to continue the rest of the riffle. The necessary support is for the bed of cards, right? So again, right, I'm off the table, and I riffle one or two cards off of the deck, which now grants me the opportunity to create a bed of cards for support. as I riffle off the rest of the deck. And that is the Riffle Shuffle in the hands, that is. And if you're doing it in the hands, you can't really do this on the table unless you lift it up from the table. But if you're done doing this Riffle Shuffle in the hands, like so, right? You can actually use your middle ring and pinky finger to bend the deck up, right? So you're actually using the base of those fingers. So you can see that it is at the base of my fingers, and you'll see that they are bent upwards and my thumbs are stopping the deck from going further. So now I have this nice little bridge, and now what I can do is that I can slowly separate my hands, and when I separate my hands, the built-up pressure will allow the deck to basically fall onto one another, right? The cards to fall onto one another. So once again, I'll go over this. So I have a Riffle Shuffle, right? So also for the Riffle Shuffle, you want to aim for consistency before you aim for the in the hands motion, right? So you can start off on the deck, on the table, and once you got the riffle down consistently, then you could move on to the in the hand motion. Because if you're not consistent with it, this is what is going to happen, right? You're going to do this, right? Or something like that, and it's going to be extremely clumpy, which isn't necessarily ideal. So always aim for consistency, right? So now you can see, like, I do have some cards perfectly interlaced with one another, but that's not really the main point, right? So again, back to the bridge. So I have my Riffle Shuffle done. Now what I can do is that the cards are at the base of my index, middle, ring, and pinky finger. So now I can just bow the deck upwards with my thumb supporting on top, because if I don't have my thumb there, look at what happens. The cards unshuffle and they basically just bounce. They basically rip through each other, which is not the best sound, and also it doesn't look nice. So again, the thumb is indeed necessary, right? Your index is just there for support, I want to say. It doesn't really bend, but do anything rather. But yeah, so you can see that the cards are at the base of my thumb, base of my fingers. And so to do the bridge, I just need to have some slowly open up my hand. So I'm basically doing this, right? At a slow rate, which allows the cards to just bend and fall onto one another. So that is called a bridge. Some books refer to it as a cascade or a waterfall. Personally, I call it a bridge. So just for terminology reasons. So it's a bridge. So that is pretty much the in the hands Riffle Shuffle, which you can do on the table, and I highly recommend you do it on the table before you move on to in the hands. And remember, try to aim for consistency before you do anything else with it. Now for further reading, there are basically two types of full in the hands Riffle Shuffles that are false that I do want to touch on. Well, touch on as in I do want to like give reference to. I don't know how else to really phrase it, but yeah, so there are two shuffles. One is the Heinstein Shuffle by Khaim, and then we have the Truffle Shuffle by Derek Delgadio. Those are two very beautiful false in the hands Riffle Shuffles. They do have their own advantages and disadvantages, so I highly encourage that you learn both. Khaim actually came up with Truffle Shuffle 2.0, so that's his handling on Derek Delgadio's Truffle Shuffle. And so yeah, they're both all three of them are extremely good, and I highly recommend you do some research on them. But besides that, yeah, that's it for the In the Hands Riffle Shuffle. This is probably the most the easiest of all riffle techniques. I want to say riffle based shuffle techniques. The other ones are not going to be so easy, so prepare yourself. Yeah, so yeah, so that's it for the most basic riffle shuffles, and so see you guys next section for the next riffle shuffle. So now we're gonna move past the things that lay people do, and we're gonna go into the stuff that only like more experienced card people know how to do. So the riffle shuffle that that I taught you before was can be learned by most lay people, but now this stuff is more for like professionals, I guess I want to say. So this is mostly used after every like casino game, and the casinos do a procedure as explained in the casino wash section that is riffle, and then box, and then riffle, and then some other variation of that. So this is the actual shuffle behind it. The casino wash is just like a mixing or like an honesty display, so that's that. But besides that, yeah, this is going to be a lot more technical versus the Riffle Shuffle previously explained. And I do want to give some crediting because some of the touches that I have on this isn't necessarily mine. So there's two main sources that I got this sort of Riffle Shuffle from. So the very first one is Z, or however you want to pronounce it, Z if you're American, Z if you're like everywhere else, right? By Steve Reynolds. There he describes he sort of like reteaches how to do a table riffle shuffle. And then in the award-winning card magic of Martin Nash, there he teaches something called the soft shuffle, which is something that's still something similar. So this table riffle shuffle is sort of like a mixture between the two. So it's yeah, I do have to give crediting to both of them. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of this shuffle, I do want to just try to give a brief history behind this shuffle. So again, nowadays it's used by casinos, but beforehand, it's probably used by gamblers before, which again, it's like casinos too, right? But it's like private games rather than like public and legal. So Ernest describes a lot of shuffle work using this sort of shuffle, but it probably predates Ernest because, Ernest doesn't like, his stuff doesn't pop out of nowhere, right? It has actual basis behind it. So I guess like this shuffle is extremely old, right? And considering Ernest was written in 1902, it's probably like the 1800s or something, right? Cards are extremely old, so it wouldn't surprise me that, gambling, the thing that, most people like get money from in those eras, I suppose, right? It wouldn't surprise me that like cards like developed this sort of shuffle. So it is probably extremely like old, right? And it is probably like the display of honesty that shows like the cards are genuinely being mixed together, even though sometimes, as magicians, we know that that's not always the case. And if you're a gambler, then for private games that is, then you know that's even more true, even though you might get shot for it, but that's what it is, right? But yeah, let's get into the nitty-gritty of the table riffle shuffle. So before you want to begin with the table riffle shuffle, the deck, contrary to how it is in your hands, so usually in your hands it's usually probably in this long position. Here you want to shift it so that now the long edge is facing you, right? Before it was the short edge is facing you. So this is going to be your starting position. But let's get into the grip. The grip is essentially your ring fingers are going to be contacting the sides of the short edges like so. And then your middle and your thumb are going to be gripping the long edges respectively, like so. Right, so your middle fingers are going to be gripping the front long edges, and your thumb are going to be gripping the back long edges, while your index are just sort of curled on top of the deck, like so, right? But yeah, so that's basically the starting position. Usually your pinky is just sort of like hanging out by the side, like so. And you know, you're sort of like touching the table or the mat or whatever you want to really call it. I mean, I'm on a close-up pad, so you know, that's better, I suppose, for table stuff. But yeah, so now that you've known the starting position, we're going to go into the deck split. The deck split is relatively important because this will determine mostly your shuffle work to some degree, right? So when you split the deck, basically, you want to get used to two things, and that is being whether you split the top of the deck to the left, or to the right, right? So that is the main thing that you want to take into account when you split the deck for the Riffle Shuffle. So to split the deck, all you really need to do is that you want to shift your fingers basically to the top portion of the deck, depending on where you want to cut it. So you want to split the top half of the deck to the right. Your right hand's fingers go to the top of the deck, while your left fingers go to the bottom of the deck, like so. If you want to split the top of the deck to the left, it's going to be the exact opposite. So here, your left fingers are going to move to the top of the deck, and your right hand is going to move to the bottom of the deck, like so, right? And so each of them basically contact half of the deck, like so. So the middle finger and the thumb contact half of the deck, right? So, like so. And that's why you're in this position, because this allows you to basically shift your fingers rapidly. And yeah, it allows you to split the deck at basically any direction at any given moment. So you ask me to like split it to the right, for example, or you split it to the left, right? It's basically, this is the starting position, and it determines basically sort of everything, right? So basically, you want to apply pressure in the top half of the deck if you want to split to the right with the right fingers, and then you move everything in their respective directions, right? So here, if you want to move the top half to the right, you just move everything to the right, like so, right? So nothing too difficult as of right now, but I do want to tell you to start practicing doing both, right? Because if you don't do both, you're going to be stuck in the habit of always splitting to the right, and that's not ideal, because you will sort of be limited in terms of what you can do, and that's not ideal because yeah, you always want to be able to do what you need at any given moment. So you know, get used to splitting the deck to the right, to the left, so get used to everything. Now once you're done splitting the deck and you realize that, oh, it's not square, and this will affect my Riffle Shuffle, there's a really simple fix, and that is you just grip both sides of the deck, like so, right? Just the same grip as you did when you split the deck. And now, what you can do is that you can actually just take the deck, right? And just gently tap the short edge of the deck using the face of this deck, right? So now you just tap it, do it by both, right? And that will ensure that this deck is sort of squared, right? So again, if I am trying to, split the deck, and this just so happens to be, messed up. So now I just need to re-grip everything, and you can see that they're messed up. Well, now I just need to give them a gentle tap, right? And now everything is squared once more, right? So nothing too difficult, but this is extremely helpful, especially if you're starting out. So if it's all messed up, and usually you can just give them a nice one tap, and that's all, right? If you're doing like multiple taps, that's sort of redundant, but it's one tap fixes everything. So that's everything that you need to know about like squaring up the deck, in case you get handed up a deck and it's all like this, and now you have to split it. And then just give it a tap, and then now it is all square. Next, the very next thing that you should do after a square up, or depending on whether your cut is messy or not, the very next thing you should know is the overlap. The overlap is extremely important in how you gauge the shuffle is. So what I mean by this is that when you actually split the deck, you're actually placing one packet on top of another. So here you can actually see that this is visibly stacked on top of one another. And this is important because this is going to determine, this is going to gauge how much of this packet is going to land in this packet, or like vice versa, right? So this is going to determine how much of this corner is going to stick inside of this packet. So for example, if this is the top packet, and then I set it, I have the overlap. Here I can basically tell that this part, right, so this corner, this part that's overlapping with this is going to be basically weaving with this packet. So this overlap allows me to gauge how much of this packet and this packet are going to be weaved together. So this is extremely important, especially for false shuffling, because this basically sort of tells me like whether or not like it's going to be easy to unweave, or how easy it is to work with the friction. So this is sort of really important. So once again, if I'm splitting to the left, right, I'm just giving them a little tap and I'm setting them one on top of another. And this tells me that this much is going to be shuffled into it, right? So if you don't believe me, if I just give them a brief riffle shuffle, and then, yeah, it is that much that's going to be shuffled into one another, right? So this much. Now, if I actually have a deeper overlap, for example, so if I have this, and I give them a shuffle, now this is going to be indicative of this amount that's going to be like shuffled into one another. So yeah, so the overlap is extremely important, and you should get used to doing it, right? At first it might feel unnatural because you're like, oh, what if I hit one another when I'm shuffling the deck, right? But over time you're going to realize just how important the overlap is. Now let's move on to the shuffle itself. I'm actually just going to use one hand before I go into like the shuffle itself. So we're going to start off with this packet, and now what you're going to do is that you're going to basically move you're basically going to so you're actually going to basically move your ring finger to this corner of the deck, to the upper right corner of the deck, like so. And this will actually give you a bit more support for the deck and for the shuffle, because if you do this, this is kind of it's kind of not the best, I want to say. So your pinky is just sort of hanging out by the side. I know some people, they like to have the pinky involved too, but I don't really care about that. You can, but again, you should try both, and then tell me which one you like more, and yeah, stick with the one that you like more. I know people like to have the pinky involved because that means more of the hand is going to cover the deck, which means more cover for their shuffle work, but personally I like the ring finger. Anyways, so the shuffle, so basically after you're done splitting the deck, you're going to move this position and move into the ring finger position, right? So you're going to move into your the middle finger thumb grip into your ring finger grip, right? And that's basically the grip shift before you're going to shuffle, right? So again, you're splitting the deck, and after you're done splitting the deck, you're going to move your ring finger to the upper right corner of the deck in preparation for the shuffle. So now that you've got this position down, what the very next thing that you're going to do is that now you're sort of going to roll your fingers backwards, right? So you're going to roll, flatten out your middle and your ring finger backwards, and you're going to basically move your thumb backwards as well. So this creates a nice little bevel, basically, like so, right? Sorry. This is not the best look. So this is going to create a bevel of sorts, like over here, which is going to help your shuffle become like it's gonna help the riffle of the shuffle a lot. So you do want to have a bevel, and you're going to do this with both hands. Basically, you're going to roll everything backwards like so. Now, the very next thing that you're going to do is basically you're not really bending the cards. You're not applying that much pressure with your index, right? You're just applying a bit of pressure. Basically the main mistake that I see with this type of shuffle is that people apply so much pressure that it bends the cards, and that's not ideal. So when I see like people try and do a table riffle shuffle, they do something like this, right? And that basically bends the cards, and it's sort of annoying to some extent because they really don't need that much pressure. If you do like a corner riffle, I mean, it does provide more cover, but it doesn't look and doesn't feel as nice, right? So essentially when you're doing a table riffle shuffle, you really want to do it by the by basically the center of the packet, like so, over here. And you're going to basically so your thumb is at the center point of the long edge, of the back long edge, right? As it's tilted back, as the packets are flattened out, right? The very next thing that you're going to do is that now that everything is sort of flattened out, your index is also flattened out, like so, right? The very next thing that you're going to do is that you're basically going to sort of lift the entire packet upwards, right? And this is going to be, basically this is going to not bend the packets that much because you're lifting the entire thing. So once you're done lifting the entire thing, like so, right? The palm of my hand is basically still touching the table, right? The mat, right? So I'm just lifting everything up. And now I apply just a bit of counter pressure with my index as my thumb sort of rolls upwards, right? And this allows the cards to just fall, right? And you can hear how gentle it is. Right? So this is the sort of sound and the sort of amount of pressure that you need for a table riffle shuffle. Because if you do it with too much pressure, you get this, and it's so much more aggressive. It's not really the thing that you're looking for. So again, this is the starting position that you're looking for. Middle finger, thumb, and then the ring finger on the upper right corner, like so. And your index is just sort of curled in the back, on top of the deck, right? Here, as you flatten out your fingers, you're rolling the deck backwards, allowing a bevel to be created. You extend your index, which now allows you to apply a bit of pressure. You're lifting up the entire packet with your thumb, and your palm of your hand is still staying on the mat. Here you just roll your thumb back upwards, which now allows the cards to fall one by one without that much pressure. And that's basically what you need for both hands, right? So I'll go over all the motions once again. You do a deck split. If your packets aren't squared up, you do this brief little tap. You do your overlap. Yeah, it should all be like in one smooth motion technically, but you know, I'm just doing it for demonstration purposes. So once you have that, you move your ring fingers to the front and you rock the deck backwards. You flatten out your fingers, you move your indexes to the front of the deck, sort of like so. You extend them rather, and now you lift the packets upwards, which now allows you to roll your thumb upwards and just give the deck like its own like sort of time or gravity. It sort of lets the cards of the deck like fall on its own, right? So it's just a very nice little roll, and it's sort of like a nice fall, right? So it's sort of like they're being dribbled one on top of another in a very nice and calm fashion, or controlled fashion, right? And that's all you need for a table riffle shuffle, right? Again, it's nothing too difficult, but I want you guys to take notice of all the details that go into a table riffle shuffle because of how technical table riffle shuffle work can get, right? So this is sort of the amount of pressure that you need. It's very light, it's very soft. It's not that hard of a shuffle, right? It's just like, just imagine like like a drizzle, right? Like, you know, when you look outside, it's just barely raining. That's the sort of the sound that you're looking for, not like this torrential rain sort of shuffle, right? Right? That's way too aggressive. Again, you just want, you know, just let the cards fall on their own as your thumbs are riffling upwards. And that's the sort of sound that you're looking for. But anyways, sorry, I got too immersed in my poetic thing. But yeah, once you're done riffling the cards, the very next thing that you're going to do is you're going to reposition your ring fingers off to the short edges of the deck, like so. And now you're going to straighten out the deck by moving your hands forward, and you're basically rotating your wrists. So like so. And now your ring fingers are just going to push everything together like so, as your thumb and your middle fingers are going to straighten everything out. So now you're back at your starting position, which is great because now you can do another Riffle Shuffle, right? And then I could repeat this to eternity, right? Which I'm not sure why you would repeat this to eternity, but you know. So this moves from starting position to starting position. You're really not changing the position. But one thing that I do want to touch on is the thing that you do after you're done your table riffle shuffle is the bridge, right? The bridge is distinctly different for a table riffle shuffle versus a in the hands riffle shuffle. So after you're done doing your little riffle shuffle, like so, once you're done doing your riffle shuffle, you can straighten the packets out, but don't push them in, right? So now you're stuck in this position where you have cards over weaved, like so, right? So now the very next thing that you can do is that you can actually, using your right hand or your left hand, it doesn't really sort of matter, but you're going to basically grip everything with your middle and thumb at the part where everything is being weaved. So now what you can do is that you can actually sort of pull the entire deck up as your pinkies, like so, as your pinkies sort of push the deck upwards, right? So now you're sort of in this position, right? So the deck is being held by your middle and thumb, and your pinkies are bending the packets, right? They're helping bend the packets. They're sort of like the pillars behind the bending of the packets, but really it's just your hand. Your hand is applying most of the force, right? So your hand is moving inwards. Your pinky are just like the vehicle or the pillars behind it. So yeah, so now you have this, and this is going to allow you to basically bridge the cards, right? And the way that you do that is extremely simple. You just sort of release pressure with your middle and thumb, and as you do this, the cards are going to fall in a bridge, right? So that's basically the bridge. It's nothing too difficult, but it does make for, you know, a sound, but it sort of bends the card, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. Usually I just like square up the cards. It's yeah, I mean, if you want to look fancy, then you could do the bridge, but again, I don't really recommend it, especially if you're doing like table work or something like that, right? So again, right, also your thumb should be on top of the overlapped cards, like so, right? Like applying just a brief pressure, or else the bridge cards will start to unweave, which isn't ideal. So yeah, you do want to apply pressure with your thumb. So again, you're grabbing the part where the cards overlay with your middle and thumb. Your pinkies are at the short edges, like so, and your thumb your hands are going to push push the packets upwards as your middle and thumb sort of bring it upwards. So in motion, sort of like this, right? Next, your middle and thumb are going to release pressure, and then they're going to bridge together, right? They're going to sort of spring together, right? And you sort of want to do it instantaneously rather than having it like display the bridge, because if you try to display it, the cards will remain bent, and that's not ideal, right? So again, you sort of want to do it instantaneously, like so. So yeah, and then once you're done doing the bridge, you can do the same square up as before. You can just move your ring fingers to the short edges and sort of just, you know, square everything up while your middle and thumb just smoothen out the long edges, like so, right? And that's how you do the bridge for the tabled Riffle Shuffle. Also, as an add-on to the Riffle Shuffle, what I want you guys to do is that you sort of want to practice which card falls first, right? So this determines, again, this lets you practice sort of without actually practicing. This sort of conditions you for, you know, false shuffling, right? For table Riffle Shuffles, right? So again, depending on how you want to control the deck, you can let one packet fall first before letting the rest fall. Or you can do the opposite, right? Letting the right hand fall first and then letting the left hand fall afterwards, right? So there's a lot of control involved with the table Riffle Shuffle, right? And depending on whether this hand moves faster or this hand moves sort of slower, I can do different Riffle Shuffle work, right? So if I move my right hand slower, then naturally the shuffle will be a lot blockier, right? So if I try to change the speed, right, of each, so you can see that with just my right hand that's moving slower, this hand sort of falls last. The cards of the right hand fall last. But if I move my left hand slower, then you can see that my left hand's cards fall last. So you do sort of want to play around with speed. You also want to play around with which hand's cards fall first, and then, you know, that's how you get into the false work, the nitty gritty of actual table Riffle Shuffle. So that's where all the hard stuff is, and that's where you should pay the most. Well, that's not where you should pay the most attention to, but that's where you should practice the most for the table Riffle Shuffle. It's where you can try to. It's where you can sort of tweak everything to create your own stuff, or like create your own stuff, as in like sort of like falsify your own stuff, I guess. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for the table Riffle Shuffle. There was a lot to go through, but you know, it's worth it. It's definitely worth it. If you do want to learn like table Riffle Shuffle work, there are a number of stuff that you can learn. So obviously, first off is the Zero Shuffle by Herb Zero. I do think that is a phenomenal false shuffle that does require a lot of work. So again, if you do want to learn the Zero Shuffle, you can go ahead and learn Zed by Steve Reynolds. So that is basically, I think, the definitive resource for the Zero Shuffle for my generation, or for in general, right? It is a phenomenal resource for the Zero Shuffle. Next, we have the push through shuffle and the pull through shuffle. There is a difference between the two. Push through is obviously like you're pushing the cards between, like, out from one another, so yeah, and pull through, you're pulling the packets from one another. I mean, the push through, you do need to pull one out of another, but there's no like push through motion, if you get what I mean, right? Next, we have like stock controls. We also have like what is it called, stack work. You also have stack work, which is difficult, especially if you want to do it at a consistent rhythm, so that is difficult. We have reversals. For example, the Steranko action reverse is a great reversal that can be done during after a table riffle shuffle, so you can go ahead and look at that. So if you want some more like actual resources, again, there's Gambling Sleight of Hand by Steve Forty, which is phenomenal. There's the award-winning Card Magic of Martin Nash, who he's phenomenal. Again, he's one of the I want to say the card greats for card gambling related type of stuff. And there's the Table Bundle by Eddie McCull. If you don't know who Eddie McCull is, he shows up in Jeremy Griffith's YouTube videos, and if you're even remotely familiar with his work, you'll know that he is great at the card table, so you can go ahead and look at that. There's also the Muy Bueno Shuffle by BJ Bueno. It is it's a really old shuffle that false shuffle that I don't think it's sold anymore as its own thing, but Conjurer Community actually has hosted a session with BJ Bueno, so where he teaches the Muy Bueno Shuffle, so you can go ahead and look at that. But besides that, that's about it for the Table Riffle Shuffle, and now we can move on to some more stuff. So yeah. So now that you've presumably mastered the Table Riffle Shuffle, I hope that you genuinely put in some work in the Table Riffle Shuffle, because it is genuinely something that I do like, and it is something that takes effort. So put in time, put in effort, and you will see that there are amazing results that come out of it. But if you did actually study it and whatnot, then welcome to the very next section, which is called the Jack Merlin Riffle Shuffle, which is actually distinctly different from how a in the hands or even a table riffle shuffle sort of goes. So you can see in the performance that it is very interesting as a shuffle. But yeah, so let's get on to some brief history as to the Jack Merlin Riffle Shuffle. So the Jack Merlin Riffle Shuffle is something that is created by Jack Merlin. I believe he first created it back in 1927, and he first published it rather in 1927 in Merlin's Master Manipulations by again Jack Merlin. And since then it's sort of stuck around, but not many people actually know how to do it or perform it rather. Where I learned it from was from Card College Volume 1 by Roberto Giobbi. So if you don't know who Roberto Giobbi is or what Card College is, I highly recommend you look it up. It's where a lot of foundational and sort of advanced sleight of hand work is published in. I guess I didn't really know what the word was, but that's where you can go ahead and look it up in case you're a beginner. And if you're a beginner, you probably shouldn't be in this section, because it is sort of more advanced, I want to say. But regardless, let's get into the Jack Merlin Riffle Shuffle. So the Jack Merlin Riffle Shuffle is sort of similar to the Riffle Shuffle, Table Riffle Shuffle that is, but it is also different in that you're splitting the packets differently. So again, just like the Table Riffle Shuffle, you want to get into the habit of splitting the top packet sort of to the back or to the front. And I'll get into this later, right now rather, is that unlike the Table Riffle Shuffle, the Jack Merlin Riffle Shuffle actually varies in that they're sort of, rather than being short edge to short edge, the packets are long edge to long edge, like so. And so you do sort of want to get into the habit of having the top packet go to the front, like so. So you're cutting the packet forward, or you're going to want to have the top packet at the back. So again, you're cutting the packet forward, rather backwards, or you're just going to move the deck forward and you're just going to hop it backwards, right? Nothing too simple. So again, you can move the entire deck forward and then cut it backwards, or you can just do this, right? It doesn't really matter as long as you get into the habit of cutting forward or cutting backwards, right? So that's the main thing that you should probably know about, splitting the deck for the Jack Merlin Riffle Shuffle. So for the very next thing that for the Jack Merlin Riffle Shuffle is the hand position. So the packet that's in your left hand, so the packets that's backwards, you should probably it's the exact same as the starting position for the Riffle Shuffle. So it's the starting position, not the riffle position. So here you have your middle finger at the top left corner over here, and your thumb at the bottom left corner, while your index is just sort of curled on top. Your ring finger is just sort of on the side, and your pinky as well is sort of just on the side, right? So this is something that you want to, just know how to do. For the front of the deck, again, it's the exact same as the starting position. It's the middle finger at the top right corner of the deck, your thumb at the bottom right corner of the deck, your ring finger is just sort of resting on the side, and your index is just sort of resting on top of the deck like so. The very next thing that you should do is that you're going to approach both packets near each other. I don't know what I was saying, but yeah. So once you have that, the very next thing that you should do is probably just lift up the back packet towards the front packet, right? So it's just the exact same, but you're lifting it upwards like so. And for the front packet, you're doing the exact same thing, right? You're just lifting your thumb upwards, so like so. So you should have this sort of inverse V formation from the side view, right? So you're doing this, right? That's what's basically happening, right? So now that you have this, the very next thing that you're going to do is that you're going to basically apply some pressure with your index finger, with your left index finger. So this will now basically allow the middle finger to riffle up the front edge of the deck. So again, also as you apply pressure with the index, you're sort of your thumb is rolling forward. So unlike the table riffle shuffle where you're rolling backwards, this hand you're sort of rolling forward, which now gives the middle finger this bevel to riffle up with, right? And this will take a bit of muscle just to sort of riffle upwards, because you usually don't do this, right? You usually don't do the Jack Merlin Riffle Shuffle, so this will take a bit of practice. For the other hand, it's sort of the exact same thing. You're rolling backwards with your hand, and then you're lifting the entire packet upwards as your thumb riffle upwards, like so, right? So combined with one another, you get this, right? You get this Riffle Shuffle. And from the side view, this is what you get. So yeah, so this is the Jack Merlin Riffle Shuffle. So I'll go over the motions once more. So cutting backwards, cutting forwards, it doesn't matter. But if you do want to get into the Riffle Shuffle, Jack Merlin Riffle Shuffle, you should get into the habit of doing both. So once you have this, now you can actually, here your left hand rocks forward and your right hand rocks backwards, right? So you're sort of like smearing them sort of towards each other, right? So this is what's basically happening, exaggerated. So once you're done doing this, now you lift up both packets toward one another and you apply some pressure with your index finger. And once you have this pressure, now you can begin riffling your thumb up and your middle finger up. And this will cause both packets to overlay, like so, right? And the rhythm is extremely important. So you do sort of want to get used to the rhythm. And also, yeah. And also for this sort of Riffle Shuffle, you can't really overlap them, so it is sort of like by instinct. So depending on whether you're used to this sort of Riffle Shuffle or not, then you could sort of gauge it. Unlike the table Riffle Shuffle, where you could gauge the packets visibly, here you have to do it sort of by instinct. So again, that's a disadvantage of the Jack Merlin Riffle Shuffle sort of deal, right? And you can realize and can notice that I'm actually bending the packets a lot more, because this entire long edge needs to clear one another for it to actually like weave one another, weave on top of another. So again, this bends the cards a whole lot. So I'm not the biggest fan of the Jack Merlin Riffle Shuffle, quite frankly, but it does look interesting enough to, you know, take notice of. Now, to do the bridge for a Jack Merlin Riffle Shuffle, this is more or less it's sort of taken from the Die Vernon one-handed table Faro or table Riffle Shuffle, but you know, it's applicable here. So here you sort of have one hand, usually it's my left hand, sort of apply downward pressure on the overweaved or on the intersection overlaid, I don't remember what I called it, on the overlaid section. So your index is sort of curled on that section. Your thumb is contacting the back packet, and your middle ring and pinky finger are contacting the front of the front packet, like so. The very next thing that you're going to do is that you're going to lift the entire packet upward. So this forms a U shape. So this is what's happening. Right, so this forms a U shape, and the very next thing that you're going to do is that you're going to release pressure with your index, which now causes the cards to spring up to one another, right? So if I do a Jack Merlin Riffle Shuffle once more, right? That was not a good Riffle Shuffle, but you know, that's that, right? Now I can just bend the packets, and then I can just release the pressure. So then, sorry, this is a difficult day. Right, so listen to how much more aggressive the shuffle is. That's why I'm not the biggest fan of it. But yeah, so I just need to get this U shape by applying pressure with my index and bending all my fingers upwards. And then I just need to gradually but fast release the pressure with my index in order to get the bridge. So there it is, you can hear it, right? So that is sort of the bridge for the Jack Merlin Riffle Shuffle that was taken from the Die Vernon one-handed table shuffle. So you can go ahead and practice that, or you can go ahead and look at the Die Vernon Riffle Shuffle. There we go. So yeah, that's the Jack Merlin Riffle Shuffle. So hope you enjoy. Now, if you want to learn some more work on the Jack Merlin Riffle Shuffle, obviously there is Card College Volume 1 by Roberto Giobbi. There he only teaches like the basic shuffle like I did over here, but if you want to learn about the false work that Jack Merlin created for his Riffle Shuffle, then you could go look at Merlin's Master Manipulations. It is being sold as an ebook, and you can also go ahead and look at Merlin at the Card Table, which is also being sold as an ebook. So I highly recommend you look at both of those resources, and yeah, we can go ahead and move on to the very next shuffle. And yeah, hopefully you master this, because it is an odd piece, but you know, I do think it is worth taking a look at. So yeah. Now, moving on, I do want to touch on a few dribble shuffles. So these shuffles are sort of hinging on the fact that you know the dribble already. So if you don't know how to do a dribble, I already have a tutorial out, so you can go ahead and look at that. But these three shuffles are using a dribble sort of principle. So yeah, yeah, you can shuffle cards using a dribble shuffle. So these shuffles, they do have a large variety of sources. I can't necessarily pinpoint, like, again, where the origin of these sort of shuffles come from, but dribble shuffles are more of a, I want to say, Spanish style of shuffling, because they are a bit more messy. But yeah, I mean, Leonard Green came up with one, so yeah. Bill Malone also has a sort of like dribble shuffle-esque thing. Jerry Andrus has something called the flip shuffle, but again, it's sort of not really the thing that I'm going to teach. So yeah. I know Franco Pasquale and Ben Earl has their own sort of touches on a dribble shuffle as well. So generally, I think everyone just sort of has like a dribble shuffle type of thing because of how like loose and how chaotic it looks, and how just, you know, relaxed it looks. So a dribble shuffle, it's sort of hard to pinpoint, but again, Jerry Andrus has one, Bill Malone and Leonard Green has one. I assume Franco Pasquale and Ben Earl, they sort of derived their work from the aforementioned magicians. So there are a lot of dribble shuffles flowing around that makes it sort of hard to pinpoint. But generally, I do think that Jerry Andrus is one of the first to, you know, play around this mechanic, and you can see that in the next sections that he plays around a lot with stuff. So yeah, now let's move on to the dribble shuffles. So again, if you don't know how to do a dribble, you should probably go ahead and look into that. But generally, yeah, let's just start with the very first dribble shuffle. So this is going to start off the exact same way as a table riffle shuffle. So again, you have your starting position like so, and you're going to split the deck like so. Now, the very next thing that you're going to do is sort of a weird dribble. So I'm going to teach the dribble right now. So over here is that if you're doing it from the outermost corners like so, what you're going to do is that you're going to apply pressure with your index as per usual, and you're just going to basically riffle off the back of the deck like so with your thumb. And as you riffle back the thumb, your middle finger is going to flatten out. So this is the exact same way as a dribble, but you know, it's just with a smaller packet and at a different sort of grip, right? So again, this is a normal dribble, and you can realize that you can see that my fingers are flattening out, and this works the exact same way. So my middle finger is flattening out as my thumb is riffling the deck, right? So yeah. And you're going to do the exact same thing with this packet as well. But now, what you're going to add to the fray is an angle. So what you're going to do is that you're actually going to shuffle the deck at basically, yeah, like a normal riffle shuffle. But now the packets are actually sort of inclined like so, right? So now what this allows the cards to do is that now it sort of emulates a riffle shuffle where you can see the packets sort of raised together, but rather than riffling the cards one by one, you're doing a dribble. So now that you have this, you're going to dribble the cards at one after another, and because of the incline, this will cause gravity to take over, and the cards just sort of like riffle, sort of fall one after another, right? So you can see this, like, basically sort of this softer softer thing, right? So this is something that I've seen Ben Earl do, right? So yeah, I mean, there's not really much to teach. If you know how to do a dribble, then this is sort of it, right? There's not really much else to teach besides you're putting an incline at this dribble grip and you're just letting the cards dribble, right? So that's basically it for this type of dribble shuffle. But once you move this from this grip to the inner corners, that becomes sort of a different type of dribble shuffle. It's the exact same thing, but now you can do it from this corner, right? And now you just do the exact same dribble motion, but you know, it's the exact same way, but it feels different because this feels a lot more open versus having something that's a bit more closed, right? But again, if depending on the sort of work that you want to do and depending on, you know, what sort of style that you like, you should play around with both. I don't necessarily do dribble shuffles, but it is some fun thing that I want to play around with. So, you know, it's you should sort of know how to do both, right? Oh, that was bad. But yeah, it just looks chaotic and it's perfect for, you know, Spanish style magicians. And you know, it generally it sort of looks, it feels the same as a Riffle Shuffle, except that it is a bit more chaotic. And also you'll notice that the incline causes the cards to fall like this, right? So that contributes to the emulation of a Riffle Shuffle, but it's not, again, it's a dribble shuffle type of deal, right? So yeah, that is two types of dribble shuffles they can sort of touch on. But the very next thing is a Leonard Green or Bill Malone type of thing. They both have their own work on this type of dribble shuffle, but yeah, let's get into it. So here, rather than having the, unlike most tabled shuffles, instead of having the long edge facing you, you're going to have the short edge facing you, which is an interesting change, but you know, it's a change. But now you're going to split the deck in half like so, and you're basically going to do your normal dribble grip, but now you're going to basically change the grip from a bill grip, from a long edge bill grip, I guess, to a short edge one, like so. Right? And you're going to do this for both hands. So if you're not used to doing the dribble in both hands, then that might be a bit of a problem, but you're doing it with half of the deck, so that's a lot easier as well. So now that you have this grip in position, you're going to apply some pressure with your index, which causes the deck to bend just a bit. And now what this gives you the opportunity to do is, now this gives you the opportunity to riffle the deck, and this sort of lets the cards fall one after another, right? So this is a again, this is just basically a dribble, and yeah, it's a flourishy type of shuffle that Leonard Green and Bill Malone both use. But yeah, so these cards are basically sort of rotating. They're sort of hinging on your fingers over here. So your middle ring and pinky finger. So now that these fingers are sort of hinging, so yeah, so they just sort of like fall, and then they sort of interweave because they're hinging and they're sort of just falling on top of one another, right? So this isn't like a traditional dribble where you sort of, so if I did a traditional dribble, right, they'll like sort of like fall apart because of the lack of a hinge. but if I had a hinge that allows them to sort of fall towards one another. So this is a modified dribble, so I do want my fingers over there, and I don't want to flatten out my fingers as much. So yeah, I do still want to flatten them just a bit, but again, not as much. So yeah, I just basically riffle my thumb upwards and allow them to fall on top of one another. So nothing too difficult, right? So again, I'm splitting the packets like so. And now I'm basically just doing a dribble, but in a different sort of grip, and yeah, with half of the packet, like so. And now to square them up, you can just do sort of whatever. You can just sort of tap the deck together with your hands, or yeah, I mean, that's basically it. You can't really do bridges with dribble shuffles because of how messy they are, but yeah, I mean, that's trade-offs, right? Now, for the last type of dribble shuffle, it's going to be a Jerry Andrews type of thing, but again, it's not really the flip shuffle, and it is basically you're just doing it from a normal dribble grip. Yeah, you're just doing it from a normal dribble grip, and it works the exact same way as the Leonard Green and Bill Malone type of dribble shuffle. So you're just going to do the exact same thing, right? And you're just going to dribble the cards one after another, like so, right? And again, if this part is going to be really hard to understand if you don't know how to dribble. So again, if you don't already know how to dribble, go ahead and look at it, because yeah, I'm not going to provide additional information on how to dribble because of how much time I spent on that. So yeah, but yeah, it's basically you're doing a dribble with your both hands and towards one another. So yeah, so again, unlike the normal dribble where you want your fingers to be sort of clear out of the way of the deck, here you want your fingers to be present just so that they hinge around the deck, which now allows the cards to rotate around your middle ring and pinky, right? So again, unlike a normal dribble where you want the fingers out of the way, you want the fingers in the way. So to apply pressure with your index finger, you can do it with an extended finger, an extended index, or you can do it with a curled in index. It really doesn't matter. I mean, I've seen people do it with extended indexes for false dribble shuffles for this type, just because it provides a bit more cover for certain types of mechanics that I'm not going to get into because, again, it's not really mine. So yeah, but that's that's the dribble shuffle. Again, I didn't go too much into detail with the dribble shuffle because I assume that you already know how to dribble the cards, right? Now, if you want to learn some false work on this type of dribble, there are quite a few resources. One, there's Leviathan by Ross Tyler. There he teaches basically a very beautiful sort of dribble shuffle. It's related to sort of the third or the last type of dribble shuffle. So that is the Jerry Andrews type of Riffle Shuffle. And next we have the Simulation Shuffle by Ben Earl, which is based on another Jerry Andrews thing called Satan's Shuffle, but here he approaches Jerry Andrews' Flip Shuffle a bit more. So again, it is similar to Leviathan by Ross Tyler, but it is different in its own right. Next we have the Shape Shuffle by Ben Earl, which is again, it's meant to emulate the Leonard Green, Bill Malone type of false Dribble Shuffles type of deal. So if you're not familiar with it, yeah. I'm actually not sure if the Shape Shuffle and the Simulation Shuffle is still being taught. This was being taught in his Gambit magazine, which I'm not sure is published anymore. You can go ahead and DM him for more information, but generally, I don't think there's any way to get it unless you sort of talk to him. Next, we have the Monge Shuffle by Bill Malone, which is, yeah, it's just the Dribble Shuffle that I was talking about, but again, it's a false handling of it. So if you're curious about it, it's in Talk About Tricks by Joshua J. Yeah, I mean, you can see it from the background, I think. So yeah, if you're not familiar with it, you can go ahead and look at that. But besides that, I think those are generally the Dribble Shuffles. So yeah, yeah, we can move on to another sort of shuffle now. So yep. Alright, so this next flourish, this next shuffle, I don't know why I said flourish, but this next shuffle is basically a combination between a Riffle Shuffle and a spring. So if you don't know how to do a spring yet, I have a tutorial on my channel. Fun fact is that I actually never really planned to do like tutorials on flourishes because, you know, it's, I mean, every channel has them, so I just never really had like a reason to create them. But yeah, so for the sake of completion and for the sake of having like a prerequisite, every prerequisite on my channel, for this video, I created like the flourish tutorials. So, you know, so you should watch them because you do need to know how to do a spring for this next shuffle. So this next shuffle is interesting because it was actually first shown to me by my grade 10, I think, grade 10 history teacher, and he called it the Russian Shuffle. Yeah, I don't know why, but I assume it's because the first person I've seen this actually on Instagram do this type of shuffle is actually Russian. So I assume that's where he also like found it from. I don't know why, but if you search on Google or whatever, the Russian Shuffle, it doesn't exist. So yeah, but it is actually a legitimate shuffle. So one handling, well, historically wise, I'm actually not sure where it comes from, but Card College Volume 1, which was first published in 1995, has something that's more or less this. The one that that my history teacher showed me is different, but you know, that's whatever. But yeah, so the spring, again, you can go ahead and check out all the historical details over there. But yeah, again, the spring is old, and so is the Riffle Shuffle. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you know, this is an old thing, but I also wouldn't be surprised if this was more like recent too, because of how like flourishing only like took off recently. But again, it's you know, it's a toss-up between whether it's very old or very new. Yeah, I mean, it's just hard to know whether or not it's just like its own thing. But I mean, I doubt Roberto Giobbi, out of all people, would create something like this, so I have reasons to believe that it's an older move. But yeah, regardless, let's get into the two handlings of the spring Riffle that's rough. The spring Riffle Shuffle, there we go. So the spring Riffle Shuffle, I'm going to teach you the handling of Roberto Giobbi from Card College first, and then I'll go into the more modern one that I've seen my history teacher talk to me about. So you know, that's cool. So basically, your right hand does all the spring motion, right? I mean, there's no denying that. I mean, even for like a normal card spring, for example, it's your right hand that does all the work. So if you don't already know how to do a card spring, I highly recommend you check out my tutorial. I cover basically all the handlings in there. So yeah. But basically your left hand does the riffling action. So this is the riffling action. If you already don't know how to do the riffling action, then I guess you sort of skipped over the part where I touched on the Riffle Shuffle, because that's where I teach the riffling action in detail. But you may be asking, how can I combine a spring with this riffling action? Well, Roberto Giobbi, or at least the handling that's described in Card College, teaches a method. Again, this shows its age because this is actually a frontal spring, right? So again, if you didn't already watch the spring tutorial, then yeah, so people like back then did like a front spring, right? So the cards shot from the front. So this is like a product of its era. It definitely is, right? So since the spring only shot from the front, then naturally you would actually need to cut this packet forward, right? And because yeah, this spring shot forward, you need to place it in front of it. So to combine both motions, your left hand basically does the riffling action, but rather than doing it from the side, we're doing it from the front, right? Now, as you're riffling, whoa, that is a bad angle. But as you're riffling, right, you're going to do your little frontal spring and hope it basically lands, right? That's basically what it is, right? So as you're riffling, you're basically going to do your frontal spring, right? The old school spring. And as you can see, this is actually not a horrible shuffle, right? You can see that they are actually genuinely interlaced. So that's basically the spring riffle shuffle, right? So your left hand riffles the cards, and as you're riffling the cards, right, at a consistent rhythm, your right hand springs the cards from the front at also a consistent rhythm, and they should, in theory, be interlaced, right? But even if the first few cards sort of like miss this, it doesn't really matter because then it sort of goes to the bottom, right? So as you're riffling this, I'm actually springing the cards and then hoping they land sort of inside of it, right? And again, you do need to play around with the deck, right? Because depending on the condition of the deck, it might spring a bit more or spring a bit less, and then you need to play around with the pressure and the distance. So you do need to play around with it. I can't give you a definite answer, but for me, and with this, I think Fontaine does a bicycle stock, or maybe I think maybe it's a crushed bicycle stock. So this is a bit thinner. But for me, with a crushed bicycle stock that is broken in, I do sort of need like about like maybe like 20 centimeters, I guess, at a you also need to test out with height, right? So here it's about like what, like 15 or 12 maybe centimeters, I want to say. Like there is like that's me with a broken and thin crushed bicycle stock deck. So for like a B stock or like a premium stock deck, you might need to look at you might need to play around with it a bit more, but that's generally what it is for me, right? So back to it, you're just doing a riffle and you're doing a spring, right? And occasionally, because of how the cards are actually like flipping down, they might bounce cards out of the deck, right? There's not really a way to circumvent it. You just need to time it a bit better. So again, you do need to play around with the shuffle a lot. So I mean, there's only so much I can teach you about this shuffle because the majority of it is actually just like playing around with the spring and the riffle. So play around with the rhythm of it, play around with the distance, play around with the height of the right hand. And so yeah. Right, so if you actually get good with it, you can actually do it off the table, but I'm not good enough, so yeah, right, over here. Right, so you can see that a few cards bounced off, but yeah, so it is a very inconsistent shuffle, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for like an actual shuffle, so it's more of a flourish, so that's interesting. Now, the more modern handling of the spring riffle shuffle is going to be using the corner spring, right? So something that's this, right? If you're not already familiar with it, again, you should probably watch the spring, the spring tutorial that I made, that I published a while back. So you know, yeah. Now, this is going to, since this is going to shoot out from the corner, you're going to have to adjust your right hand a bit. So, rather than placing, well, your left hand too. So rather than having your left hand in front of the right hand, you're going to have it side by side, almost like a normal riffle shuffle. But your right hand, because it's shooting at an angle with this corner, you're going to have to move your right hand backwards just a bit, right? But obviously it depends on your spring again, so you're gonna have to play around with this. So as you're riffling this packet with your left hand, as per usual, you're going to spring this packet into this this other packet, right? So again, as I'm riffling this, I am springing it at the same time, and this causes the cards to be interlaced with one another, right? And so there's really not much I can teach you it's legitimately just a spring and a riffling action. So again, I can't teach you much besides, you know, you have to play around with it, and you have to know basically the timing of riffling and the timing of your the rhythm of your spring, right? And once you have those two down, you can play around with distance, and then you can get everything consistently, and then you could get basically a legitimate shuffle like so, right? So basically there's not really much I can teach you about a spring riffle shuffle, besides, you know, just watch the spring tutorial and just play around with it. But yeah. So for further reading about the spring riffle shuffle, that's sort of a difficult thing because I don't think anyone has ever done like a false spring riffle shuffle. I mean, you can do like a, I mean, because of how the cards are interlaced, you can do everything that's that comes with a normal in the hands riffle shuffle. So you can go ahead and look at those resources. But yeah, if you want to learn like the more like antique version of the spring riffle shuffle, I mean, I already teach it here, but if you want to learn it at its source, it's from Card College Volume 1, published back in 1995 by Roberto Giobbi. So I mean, just in general, Card College is a phenomenal series of books. So again, I do recommend you read it, even if I teach it here. So again, yeah, books. So yeah. So now we can move on to the spring shuffle, which is actually a different thing compared to a spring riffle shuffle. So this is again a flourishy type of shuffle, but I do think that, you know, it has its own merits, especially because it was created, as far as I know, by Jerry Andrus. Where it was first published was in Andrus Deals You In from 1956. So this is basically a very, again, a old move. I mean, this was from like 70 years ago. So yeah, I mean, card magic is also extremely old, so you should take that into account. But there was also something that was published also like somewhat similar to the riffle shuffle, not the Riffle Shuffle, the Spring Shuffle, and it was from Russell Duck or Russ Duck, called the Russ Duck Riffle. It was first published in the Cardist issue 7 back in 1958, so 2 years after Jerry Andrus published his. But I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, they came up with it independently, because I mean, it's sort of a natural evolution to a Riffle Shuffle, because Riffle Shuffle is it's contained in the hands, and you know, it's just like the cards just spring one after another, so why not add some distance to it? And the most natural way to add some distance to a Riffle Shuffle would be to turn into a spring. So yeah, I'm not surprised if they both came out with it independently. So naturally, yeah, that's the historical context behind it. Just yeah. Now, to do the Spring Shuffle, it's extremely simple, as it's in the name, right? You just do 2 springs at the same time. So rather than the Spring Riffle Shuffle, the Spring Riffle Shuffle was having one hand riffling and the other hand just shooting cards into the riffle. You're going to basically do a spring into one into another. So yeah. So you're going to split the packets like you did with a normal Riffle Shuffle, but unlike a normal Riffle Shuffle, you're going to have to place the packets deeper into your hand. So for me, I'm actually at like the base of my fingers over here, right? And this is extremely important because this shuffle actually takes place inside of your own, inside of your hands, right? You can't do it on the table. Well, you can do it on the table, but like Jerry Andrus actually does it on like in his own hands. So you need to create like as much space as possible on your fingers to, you know, just have like a cradle to catch the cards, right, as they're being sprung. So now the cards are actually being held by your middle ring and pinky finger, right, at the base of it. Your index is just sort of hanging out, and your thumb is basically just contacting the back end of the back short edge of the cards, right, like so. And this is going to basically allow you to spring the cards into the center space of your fingers, right? So depending on depending on the condition of the cards and how big your hands is, and yeah, how soft the cards are, you have to like vary the distance a bit. But generally, I think it's just like fingertips touching one another. So now this creates like a safe spot or a cradle for the cards to land in. So here you can begin springing the cards however you want. So I sprung one, I spring the cards from my other hand, and I basically continue this little pattern until I get through the entire deck. So this creates a huge mess in the center of my cradle, right? I don't know why I tapped the table, but like of my hand, right? So I'm doing this. So you do need to play around with the pressure, and also well, not the pressure, but like well, yeah, the pressure, because if you shoot too hard, it'll hit this, and then the cards will tend to slide out. So again, you do want to play around with the pressure. So when you do the spring, this is modified compared to a normal spring, so I do want to touch on that a bit. So the packet is being bent by your thumb, and you can see it over here that it is going into the palm of my hand, right? Yeah, I mean, there's not much to it. It's not really contacting all of my palm. You can see that there's still some space, but again, it's contacting like this part of my thumb, so you do want to take that into account. But again, my hand isn't your hand. You know your hand best. I can't tell you where the packet is, so you do need to play around with how much you bend this packet. But as you can see here, I'm still beveling this this deck, right? I'm still beveling the short edge of the deck. So again, the bevel is extremely important, and if you don't know how to do a spring yet, you should probably look into that. But if you do know how to do a spring, then again, you do need a bevel, and you should take that into account. So yeah, once I have my little cradle in place, I just need to spring my cards one after another. right? And hope that they don't bounce everywhere. I believe that Jerry Andrus actually did it closer to his body, so then the cards, in case that the cards like go everywhere, he still had his body to sort of like block it. I can't really confirm it because it was filmed on like a VHS tape, so it's very like low quality in terms of like, so I can't really see much, but I think that is a failsafe that you can have in case that the cards go everywhere. So you do need to play around with the plane of the deck, because if my hands, if my hands are too forward, the cards will slide out, like so. But if my hands are leaned too backwards, the cards will also slide out from the back, right? So if I do it from here, you can see that cards are beginning to fall backwards. So there is some sort of sweet spot for it. But you can help create that sweet spot by sort of removing your pinky from the cradle and just sort of try to like catch it to some degree, right? But again, that usually I don't really do that because that's way too jank of a position. But again, that is an option that you have, right? But yeah, so you should preferably try to find that sweet spot of how fast and how hard you're spraying your cards, and just that sweet spot of how much you're balancing the deck. So don't be afraid to what was it called? Don't be afraid to start like playing a balance game as you're spraying the cards, because obviously your pressure can change midway through the spraying, so you might need to rebalance the deck as you're doing the shuffle because of cards are slipping everywhere, and so you want to take that into account as well. But generally there's not much I can teach you. It's just a spring, a modified spring that's deeper into your hand. So as long as you know the spring and that you can modify it on a whim, then I don't know why I said that, but as long as you can do that, then you just need to create your little cradle and play a balance game and test everything. Test the pressure, test the distance, test the force of your spring, and so yeah, that should be about it for a spring shuffle. So yeah. Now, if you're curious about learning more about the Spring Shuffle, Jerry Andrus' book, The Andrus Deals You In, is no longer in print, but he still has a DVD series that actually details the Spring Shuffle, and he teaches the false variation of the Spring Shuffle. So it's called A Lifetime of Magic by Jerry Andrus. It was first like published, I guess, in 1976. So again, this was it's been quite a few years since I was published. Or no, wait, no, the VHS series wasn't published in 1976. No. So he actually teaches the Satan Shuffle, which is the false variation of the Spring Shuffle, in Card Control. So the Andrus Card Control series, it's a 2-book volume, and he teaches it in he teaches Satan Shuffle over there. It was first published in 1976. The VHS series, I'm not sure when it was first published, but again, A Lifetime of Magic by Jerry Andrus, Satan Shuffle is taught over there. So you can go ahead and learn the false variation either on Lifetime of Magic, or if you can manage to find a physical copy of Andrus Card Control. I do believe it's being sold as a ebook, so you can go ahead and look at that. But besides that, that's it for the Spring Shuffle, and we can move on to just a different shuffle. Moving on to the Faro Shuffle. The Faro Shuffle is what many people refer to as a perfect shuffle, perfect interlace. It sort of really doesn't matter. All that you really need to know is that, well, as the name implies, it is a perfect shuffle. So what this means is that it puts one card, well, in between of another card, in between another card, just perfectly. So it's a 1 1 1 1 1 1 sequence, right? With the Riffle Shuffle, you'll notice that sometimes it's in clumps, so it's not really like the best or like a perfect shuffle. I mean, does it look fancy? Yeah, but like it's not a perfect shuffle. But because of this perfect interlace, it is sort of mathematical in nature. So when I say mathematical, I do really mean that there is some math involved. And people like Juan Tamariz actually take that into account and created the anti-pharaoh, which is distinctly different from what the Christian emblem anti-pharaoh is. And there's also like a certain principle where if you do 8 perfect out pharaohs, I'll talk about the out and in pharaohs later, but if you do 8 perfect out pharaohs in a row, you'll go back to the state of the deck before you first started doing the shuffles. So for example, if I started out with this sequence, if I did 8 perfect out pharaohs, then I would return back to this same exact sequence, right? So that's what I mean by, returns back to the state before we start doing the shuffles. So yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if casinos did actually use the shuffle because of how it puts, it's a perfect weave. Obviously, the math side, they probably won't use it, but that's where the cuts come in and whatnot. But for example, if you have like a 4 of a kind and you sort of want to lose them in the deck, what better way is there to ensure that there is like distance in between of each of them by doing a Faro Shuffle? So for example, I have like 4 aces or whatever, and I did a Faro Shuffle. Well, this puts like one card in between of each, right? Like genuinely, right? So you can't really get away from that. So once you do that, you can give them a few cuts, you can lose them, and then you could do another one. And so yeah, pharaohs are pretty useful for, I assume, for casinos. I'm not sure if the modern day casino uses them. I just know that they say riffle, but riffle can mean a lot of things, so you know, that's what it is, right? But speaking of gambling and whatnot, the Faro Shuffle actually first appeared, as far as I know, in gambling type of books, not in magic books as far as I'm concerned. So the very first not the very first publication, but one of the first publications was in Kostschitz, I think that's how you pronounce it, Kostschitz Manual of Useful Information, which was published in 1894. And in the same year, someone else published the Faro Shuffle as well. So John Neville Maskelyne, who published Sharps and Flats, also published the Faro Shuffle in that book back in 1894 as well. Now, if Maskelyne actually sounds familiar, it's because Jeremy Griffith actually spoke about him in a video. So if you don't know that video yet, or you just want to revisit it, I'm going to put it in the comments down below in the Faro Shuffle section. Now, so what this tells me, when someone just publishes, when 2 different people, I don't know why I did that. When 2 different people publish the same move in the same year, I mean, chances are someone did it beforehand. So it's probably very unlikely that they created it independently. So chances are someone published it beforehand and we just don't know about it. It might be in a random book that no one has ever heard of. And so can I confirm that theory? No, but also, what are the chances of them both publishing the same move in the same year? So it's probably, existed beforehand, so it's probably older than 1894. So there's a couple of things that you should know of before we get into the Faro Shuffle, and that is how the deck will affect your Faro Shuffle. So whether a deck is traditionally cut or a modern cut, well, they'll tell you how you should shuffle a deck, right? So if you don't know what a modern or traditional cut is, I'll link a video to the Guide to United States Playing Card Company video that I made a while back, or yeah, I made it a while back, but I might have published it like recently, so that's, yeah. But depending on how a deck is cut, that'll determine how you need to Faro a deck of cards. So for example, a traditional cut, you'll need to Faro from bottom to top, like so. For a modern cut, you'll need to Faro from top to bottom, so yeah, so like that, right? But if you're not sure what cut of the deck that you have, or what cut your deck has, chances are, if the website you bought it from doesn't list the cut of the deck, it's probably a modern cut, especially if it's a United States Playing Card Company deck. So if it is a USPCC deck, I believe a traditional cut actually costs more, so websites or like sellers will list it as a feature to get you to like buy it. So again, a traditional cut will be listed if they're selling a deck. If it isn't listed, then chances are it is a modern cut. So if you're using a Cardamundi deck, I believe all of their decks are being cut in a modern cut. If you're using a Taiwan or a Republic of China deck of cards, chances are it is a traditional cut. So it's really only up for United States Playing Card Company, where the cut of the deck is somewhat varied, so you'll need to look that up. But again, rule of thumb is Cardamundi is a modern cut, and Taiwan or Republic of China playing cards are a traditional cut. So take that into account. The very next thing that you should probably take into account is how used a deck of playing cards is. So depending on how used a deck is, it will affect how your Faro sort of performs, right? And it's because of, you know, how the cards are bent and how they're warped in a sort of way, is that once they're sort of warped, it will sort of affect how the cards will interlace with one another. So for example, if I had like a sort of like perfect interlace, this card isn't straight. So for example, I had this, chances are this card might slip into the warped card as well. So taking into account that doing it with a newer deck will be easier. So if you're a beginner, then you know, do it with a newer deck. And so because then you'll have less interference and learning the Faro will be easier. Now with that said, you don't want to use a deck that's fresh out of the box without doing something first. So again, I do have a video on how to break in playing cards. You can go ahead and look at that. But basically what I tell you to do is that I tell you to smoothen out the edges of a deck of cards. And that is because when a deck is right out of the box, if it's not from Cardamundi or if it's not from Taiwan or Republic of China, the deck will be very rough on the edges, right? And so this actually prevents the Faro from functioning properly. So again, you want to use a deck with smoothened out edges. So again, you can use like a nail file like Jerry Andrus does, or you can use like your pair of jeans and just rub it against like a pair of jeans, right? I might have some fluff over there, but like generally, as long as you have smooth edges and it is a somewhat new deck, that's my recommendation for you to use to learn the Faro Shuffle. New deck, but with smooth edges. So if you're just starting out, then you know, smooth deck, smooth edges with a new deck, somewhat new. As long as it's somewhat new, then you're good to go. Also, if you're by new, I mean like, you know, the cards are still like straight. Again, if you're doing too many pressure moves and it's like a new deck, then it won't work, right? Because the cards are going to be warped and they're going to be bent. So yeah, so a new deck with straight cards with smooth edges. Yeah. So I have over here two decks of playing cards. One is a traditional cut and one is a modern cut. Since most decks are being cut in a modern fashion nowadays, I'll go over the modern cut Faro first, but generally they do start the same, so you know, it doesn't really matter for now. So to start off, you do want to have the deck in a dealer's grip. So if you don't know what a dealer's grip is, you probably shouldn't be here. But so yeah, so now let's move on to the very next grip change that you do. The very next step to the Faro is basically just changing your grip from a dealer's grip to a elevated dealer's grip. And the way that you do this little brief grip change is that you just curl in your thumb, contact the long edge like so, and then you just re-extend it, right? So nothing too difficult. It's just extend, it's just curl in and extend, and then you'll notice that all the cards are, you know, it's being propped up, right? And you have this massive amounts of space. The very next thing that you're going to do is that now you're going to approach the deck and you're going to grip it with your ring finger and your thumb at the corners of the bottom corners of the deck. Your middle finger is going to follow suit, and your index is just going to be curled on top of the deck like so. Now, the very next thing that you're going to do is that you're going to lift up a portion of the deck with your right hand. And so usually nowadays I can just like guesstimate when there's a 26-26 card split, but for you it might be a bit more difficult. This comes with experience, so don't be afraid don't be afraid of making like mistakes. So again, it's just my ring finger and my thumb that's just doing the majority of the split. You can actually visually tell when it is a 26-26 split. So yeah. But if you're doing it from a new deck, chances are you can see the King of Clubs and the King of Diamonds. Yeah, so the King of Clubs and the King of Diamonds, you just need to split it over there, and that tells you how much a 26-26 split is. So sans jokers, right? So you don't without the jokers. So a 26-26 split at the King of Clubs and the King of Diamonds without the jokers, and that's a perfect split. But if you're doing it with a shuffle deck, then yeah, just do a you're gonna have to do like a visual comparison. But otherwise, once the experience kicks in, then you know it should be relatively easy for you to do a split. So once I have my split down, I'm going to basically take this packet into my right hand. So I'm just going to bang the short edges of the deck together. And what this allows me to do is that because my index is over here on the opposite short edge, this squares up this packet, but this little bang will also allow me to slide this packet deeper into my right hand, which now allows this short edge to contact the pinky on this side, which now allows me to basically have a backing for each deck, right? So your ring finger basically shifts from the corner to around like a quarter of the deck, right? And my middle finger is now like near the center of the deck. So again, this should just be a very light tap. It shouldn't be like a very aggressive tap. It's just like a very like light tap, right? But obviously you can drop it or drop the packet before the tap. So you can see here, I'm basically like doing the adjustment before the tap. It really doesn't matter as long as you get into that same grip, right? Right? So as long as you get into this position, it really doesn't matter. But let's talk about the Faro itself, right? Now that we've got the deck split down. So now that you've got the deck split down, basically the only thing they should know is that when you approach the deck, it is at an incline. So you're actually approaching it in a sort of like V formation, upside down V, for a modern cut. So this is actually extremely important because this will allow the cut of the deck to basically take over and let the weave of the deck do its own thing, right? So once you approach in this little tent formation over here, let me just adjust my camera real quickly. So once you do the weave of this deck, so you can see over here, it is just a very slight incline, right? There's really not much to it, but this much will allow the cut of the deck to basically take over. So you're just basically going to create this tent with the upper right corner of the right hand packet with around the center of the short edge, right? And so once you're done matching this corner up, you're basically just going to slide the right hand packet against the short edge, right? And you'll notice that now it starts to basically weave into one another, which is perfect because this allows the cards to, yeah, just weave perfectly. And so this doesn't necessarily, again, if the cards are warped, chances are you won't get a perfect weave. But if all the cards are being straight or are like straightened out, then it shouldn't be too much of an issue. If the cards are indeed like warped, you can actually do this. You should actually probably compress the cards together during the shuffle. So what I mean by that is that you're going to need to curl in your middle ring and pinky finger, and then you're going to curl in your index from underneath the deck and push up against these fingers, which now basically closes all the gaps in between of the deck, right? So if you see over here, I do have a few gaps like so. I just need to push against it, and this basically forcefully closes all of the gaps, right? I'm going to do this for my right hand as well, right? So I'm going to curl in my index, curl in my ring and middle finger, and I'm going to apply some pressure, and then hopefully this closes all of the gaps. And now I can retry my Faro, right? So now I can just do my Faro Shuffle, and then hopefully, yeah, it doesn't do a too big of a gap, you know. But yeah, so now that we've got that correction down, yeah, for the weave, it's basically very important that it is very soft in handling. So if you try to force the cards into weaving too much, chances are the corners will bang against one another, and this will cause one of the corners to start splitting. And once the corner starts splitting, you can't really save it anymore. So don't forcefully shove the cards into one another. You want to, again, this is a very soft move. Trust the cards to weave into one another. If the cards aren't weaving together, it's either because you're using too much force, or you're approaching the deck at a wrong angle, or you know, you're using the wrong cut of the deck. So you're using a modern Faro for a traditionally cut Faro, or your deck is just garbage. I mean, it is possible. So if you're using like a dollar store deck, chances are it's laser cut, and laser cut decks don't really Faro one into another that well. So it's probably just like zoom, right? And it's just flat. So it won't be able to Faro together. So make sure that, you know, you have at least a workable deck, right? But yeah, so this won't be possible with a so yeah, make sure that your deck is actually workable. I mean, there's really not much other advice that I can give you. This is mostly by feel. There's not really much else that I can teach you. Is that most of the work of this shuffle is being done by the cards, right? I'm not doing much for this shuffle besides just moving the cards and just doing a few minor adjustments. But for traditional Faro, that's where there is a slight change, right? So rather than approaching the deck sort of in an A type of formation, I'm actually approaching the deck in a V sort of formation, so like that, right? So rather than approaching it like this, I'm actually approaching it from bottom to top like so, right? And I'm going to basically do the same thing, right? But now I'm Faroing the cards from bottom to top, right? So you can see it like this, right? And that is another perfect Faro, right? So you can see like all the cards are being woven in perfectly. Now, if you're having trouble doing the Faro Shuffle in one go, just do like multiple saws. So for example, what I mean by in one go, I mean this, right? So when I do a Faro Shuffle, I just do this. So, but if you're having trouble just doing that, then you can actually just slowly move the corner back and forth, right? So when you can see my Faro Shuffle, I'm actually just moving it, the deck back and forth, and just pushing against the edges slightly, which now allows the Faro Shuffle to be completed, right, naturally. And so don't worry if you don't get it on the first go, just slowly saw the cards into one another, right? So over here you can see, if I just move the cards back and forth, there we go, I got my Faro Shuffle. It's not perfect, but again, I'm just trying to like do it really quickly. There's basically not much else I can teach you besides it is basically up to you to know how your cards are interact with one another. So again, things that you should notice when you're doing a Faro Shuffle is a soft amount of pressure, the amount of incline. If there's too much of an incline or a decline, chances are the cards won't like Faro into one another, right? So that's something they should take into account. Next is probably the amount of pressure that you're putting in. So you're putting in too much pressure, the cards will bump into one another and the edges will start fraying. So once you got the main principle of the Faro Shuffle down, you actually don't really need to stay in this one motion, right? You can actually do it from any corner, from any side. It really doesn't matter. But as long as you got the motions down, you can do it from anywhere. So I know, for example, some people like to do it from this corner to this corner. So for example, a left corner to a left corner Faro. So some people like to do something like this. But once you got the main motions down, then really doesn't matter what corner you do it from. So for example, I can still do it from that corner. So it really doesn't matter. As long as you understand the principle and you feel the Faro, then you can do it from any corner that you want. So yeah, it doesn't really matter as long as you understand the pressure, as long as you understand the cut of the cards, and yeah, as long as you understand how to approach the deck for a Faro, then you could do it from basically any deck, well, any proper deck, I should say. And yeah, so take that into account. Take into account that you don't need to follow my every single directions once you have the Faro down. Once you have the Faro down, you can do it from basically any position. And so yeah, feel free to do some of your own stuff, right? Some of your own corrections or whatever. So there's actually two ways they can do a Faro. One is the in Faro. The in Faro is basically when you bury the top and bottom cards into the Faro. So actually I'll get my aces out. Right, so if I have an ace of spades and an ace of clubs on the top and bottom, when you notice is that when I do a Faro, if I actually if I actually have a perfect 26-26 deck split, right? Okay, nope. If I have a perfect 26-26 deck split and I do a Faro Shuffle, chances are I'm actually just burying the top and bottom cards into the center of the deck, right? And so that is what an in Faro does, is that to easily remember it, is that if you're burying the top and bottom, actually, you know what, I should probably do this, is that if I do a perfect in Faro, chances are I'll actually bury the top and bottom card into the center of the deck. So that's how you remember it. You're burying them in the center of the deck for an in Faro. So let me just, if I can manage to get it with a face-up card, I cannot. Sorry. Right, so now this is a in Faro. So you can tell that the top card over here is being buried into the center of the deck. So I have one card on top, and the bottom card is also being buried into the center of the deck. So you can see that I have a card below it. So it's basically being sandwiched into the deck, right? But If I have a out Faro, that's where things become different, because now if I Faro, I'm actually shuffling the top and bottom cards back to the top of the deck, right? So back to the top and bottom of the deck. So if you notice with a out Faro, the top card will stay on top and the bottom card will stay on the bottom, right? So the best way to remember this is the top and bottom cards stay on the outside of the deck, right? So that's the main difference between a in Faro and an out Faro. So yeah, and this will apply to some mathematical stuff. So again, for the 8 perfect out Faros, yeah, but also some tricks you do need to, you know, for example, do a false shuffle or whatever, or maybe you can do like a stack, then, you know, a out and an in Faro will affect how that works. Now, for those who are saying that I'm cheating by doing a Faro Shuffle with a fancier deck, I'll do it with just a normal bicycle deck, and I can still do a Faro Shuffle just as easily, right? So I can just do this, right? Right, so it's nothing that difficult. It's just that if you can't necessarily do it on your own, don't worry. Again, this is more of a feeling thing. I can't give you that much more information. It's just, you know, it's just a perfect it's just feeling based. I can't give you any more information than that. So this is a perfect Faro, right? So again, this is just a feeling thing. Once you understand the pressure and everything, then that's when you can start trying to do the Faro Shuffle. Take my advice into account, and so you should be able to do the Faro Shuffle. Now, with the Faro Shuffle, there is some sort of different bridge that you can do from that's different from the normal Riffle Shuffle. So, for example, after you're done doing your little Faro Shuffle, so I'll just do it real quickly. All right, so this is not perfect, but it's whatever. So now that you have your Faro Shuffle done, you can approach the deck with one hand, grip the short edges with your middle and ring finger and your thumb on another, and then you curl in your middle finger, your index finger, around the deck, right, like so. And what now you can do is that you're going to approach the deck with your left hand, and it's going to support everything from the bottom. And to do the bridge, you're just going to release pressure with your index, which now allows the cards to just bridge into a nice little pile into your left hand. So that's how you do a bridge from a Faro Shuffle, right? So I'll go over that once more. After you're done a Faro Shuffle, right, you approach the deck in a basically extended. Also, it doesn't really matter how much is shuffled into one another. As long as you can reach it, then it's fine, right? So don't worry if you're pushing it in too much, as long as you're extending your hands to the max, right? So take into account the amount of flesh that I'm actually like wrapping around the face of the cards, like so, right? So it's not that much, it's just a bit of a ledge that's like holding the cards together, right? And once I'm ready, I just release pressure with my index finger, and then we can have a nice squared up deck into your left hand. So there's a number of resources that you can look up when you're doing a Faro Shuffle. One is something by Ryan Murray. So if you don't know who Ryan Murray is, he is a Canadian magician who puts in an insane amount of work for just one concept. And so he has a book called Curious Weaving, there we go. And so yeah, he talks all about the Faro, the anti-Faro, and everything like that in that book. You also have the Faro Shuffle by Homer Leewag. There he teaches the Filipino false Faro, so it is a false variation of a Faro Shuffle. You can also look at Tryout by Yuji Murakami. So there he teaches, again, another false Faro. And then we have Revolutionary Card Magic by Ed Marlowe. He has the Faro notes, or the Faro Shuffle notes in in there, so that's included in the book. And then we have Talk About Tricks, William Eston, or Eaton, yeah, I don't know how you pronounce it. He has a false shuffle published in Talk About Tricks as well. And so yeah, that's about it for the Faro Shuffle, and so hope you enjoy. So this will be the very last shuffle that I'm going to cover over this long video. This has been a very long and tedious process, so I'm sort of glad that it is over. But regardless, let's go into the one-hand Faro Shuffle. It's also called the one-hand Riffle Shuffle, but you know, there's not really any riffling done, so I'm not going to call it the one-hand Riffle Shuffle. But unfortunately for me, the very first publication of this move was under the name of the one-hand Riffle Shuffle, so that's too bad for me. But it was first published by Howard de Courcy back in 1945 in Hugard's Magic Monthly Volume 3, Issue 7. So yeah, it has been a while ago, but that's where, as far as I'm concerned, the very first publication of this type of move. But before we get into the move, I do want to say that if you don't already know how to do a Faro Shuffle, why are you here? I mean, this is the harder variation of a Faro Shuffle, so if you don't already know it, you should probably go check it out. It's like the section right before this, so you know, you should probably go check it out. But there is a prerequisite, another prerequisite, and that is concerning the deck. The deck is that it can only be done with a traditionally cut deck. If you can't do, if you only have like modern cut decks, just flip the deck face up. So now you have like a traditionally cut deck, right? But you can't really Faro it from the back, right? So this is a traditionally cut deck. So yeah, if you have a modern cut, for example, then just flip it face up and then do the Faro. So that'll substitute a traditionally cut deck for the moment, right? But yeah, let's get into the Faro Shuffle, the one-hand Faro Shuffle. The very first thing they should know is that there is indeed a one-hand cut that's involved, but yeah, it shouldn't be too difficult. So you're going to start off in an elevated straddle grip. So again, it's just like a dealer's grip, but it's just like a straddle grip. So start off in a straddle grip. The very next thing you're going to do is much like the normal Faro. You're going to curl it in your thumb and you're just going to extend it, right? This allows the deck to be propped up in your hand. And then the very next thing you're going to do is that you're going to move your index to the opposite long edge, so in the right long edge of the deck. And what you're going to do is that now your index is going to curl in and split the deck in half, right? And it's basically going to shove itself into the deck, right? And you'll notice that the top packet is contacting the nail of my index finger, and this is going to be important. So to split the deck, now the bottom packet is being only held by my index and my thumb. So now to continue the one-handed cut, I'm actually just going to release pressure with my thumb. So now this top packet is only being held by gravity and my middle ring and basically sort of pinky finger. The very next thing I'm going to do is that now I'm actually going to move my index and thumb to the left. And this allows me to basically, split the deck in half. And because this packet is gliding on top of my nail, the cards underneath there shouldn't be moving anywhere, right? So again, I move my index to the long edge along with my middle finger. I split the deck and I shove my index finger in there. The nail is contacting the upper packet. I release pressure with my thumb, and then I just move the entire packet to the left. And so now once my index finger clears this packet, so once the nail clears it, you'll notice that I'm continuing the pattern, the motion of going to the left until until this packet starts sliding down and I'll let it slide down until it's basically around after the first joint, so around like here, right? And that's where I need the packet to be. So yeah, I just do my one-handed cut, and then yeah, this stabilizes everything, right? So now this packet is being held by my index finger and my thumb, and this packet is being held by my pinky, my ring finger, my middle finger, and my index. Now traditionally, for especially in old magic books, so in Card College, he actually remained well, this move actually remains in this position. I'm not the biggest fan of that. I actually move my middle finger to this upper portion, to this upper short edge of the deck. And what this allows me to do is that this allows me to actually regrip the deck a lot easier. So now this packet is in a straddle. So now my middle finger, my ring finger, and my pinky finger are holding this packet in a straddle, while my index and my thumb are holding this deck in a very bizarre straddle as well. So again, this allows a lot more control over the deck versus the traditional this, right, where once I remove my index, everything falls apart. So that's why I move my middle finger to the top of the deck, right? So this allows a lot more control over the two packets. Again, you don't need to do this, but that's what I personally prefer. So once you have this down, you can obviously readjust the packet however you want. So, you know, you can just do whatever, right? And now what you're going to do is that you're going to basically move your thumb to the right, and you're going to move your pinky to the left. And what this will do is they'll contact the corners of the deck of these packets together. And once this happens, now you can just do your Faro Shuffle, right? You can just do your standard Faro Shuffle. And once the Faro starts, I actually move my pinky back to the edge of the long edge of the deck, and it'll start applying a bit of pressure, which now allows the packets to Faro into one another, right? So again, if you don't already know how to do a Faro, you should probably look into that. But generally, it is pretty straightforward once you got the one-handed cut down. So here I have my one-handed cut complete. I move my middle finger to allow for more control and readjust the packet if needed. Here I start the Faro. So for example, here, once I start the Faro, I actually move my pinky to the opposite corner, and I start applying a bit of pressure, which now allows the cards to Faro into one into another, right? And you'll notice I'm using my index finger as a swivel point for both packets to sort of meet together. So you'll have this nice V formation, like so. Now, once you're done actually shuffling the packets, you can do a bridge, right? And the way that you do it is very simple. You're actually just going to curl in your index finger, right? So you're going to curl in your index finger, and you're going to contact everything underneath, like so, right? And your thumb and your ring finger is going to basically push the packets until they are flush with one another, right? So now they're basically straight with one another. Now, if you're actually having trouble faring the cards one into another, remember that this is a traditionally cut like Faro Shuffle type of deal. So if you're having trouble, chances are you're actually not applying pressure in the correct direction. So notice that when I actually do the one-handed Faro Shuffle, I'm actually pushing it somewhat upwards, one into another, right? So this actually facilitates the Faro Shuffle. So if I actually try pushing it the opposite direction, for example, so if I try doing it from a sort of like this, I won't be able to shuffle it because, again, this is more of a traditionally cut Faro, and also it doesn't feel right in the hands. So again, try pushing the deck like this, one into another, right? And remember, try to keep the pressure like minimal and try to let the cards do the work, and then Faro into one into another. So once you're done doing your one-handed Faro, what you can do is you can do a bridge, which is not that different from how bridges usually work after a shuffle. So once you're done this, you can actually move your index out of the way, and now your thumb continues pushing the packets one into another, and so you're basically going to have this packet. So now the entire long edge is being shuffled, is being interwoven, right, rather than just the corners. So once you have this, your index finger can now apply pressure on the top of the deck. So once your index finger starts curling in and applying pressure, you'll get this nice U shape. And now you'll notice that my ring finger and my pinky finger are sort of bent in, and they're sort of like holding the cards. My thumb is doing that as well. And now that I have this in place, what I can do is that now I can release pressure with my index finger, and this will cause the cards to start bridging together, right? Sorry, that's I let it stay in my palm too long, so that's sweaty. But yeah, so that's basically the bridge to the one-handed Faro Shuffle. Again, it's just you just do your Faro Shuffle, right? And now you're moving your index out of the way. Here you coalesce the packets, sort of. And then here, you can move your middle finger off to the side as well. For me, it doesn't really matter, but yeah, I like moving it to the side just because it looks more equal, sort of. Here I apply pressure with my index finger. I curl in my fingers. And here I release pressure with my index finger to bridge the cards. And that is the one-handed shuffle, Faro Shuffle, rather. So there is a couple of resources that you can learn the one-handed Faro Shuffle from. I mean, not like a couple. There's like none that you can learn it from. I know René Lavant actually has a false one-handed Faro Shuffle. It's in his DVD series Maestro. So that is a Spanish DVD, but there are subtitles, so you're good to go. Richard Turner also has a sort of one-handed false Faro that I'm not sure if he published it, but yeah, I mean, does exist out there. I mean, as long as you know what he's doing, that you should be able to learn it. But yeah, René Lavant, I highly recommend his work. And so yeah, that should be about it for the one-hand Faro Shuffle. If you have any more questions, don't hesitate to ask me. So yeah. And that was it. That was every shuffle that's like more or less public domain at this point. This was an extremely long video. I mean, it took me the course of like 4 days to film. I'm still not done filming everything yet, but you know, I'll get there one day. Now, I didn't teach a couple of shuffles in general because one, they're still being sold, and also, you know, it's just not right to teach things that are still being like sold. But you know, they're just shuffles, so I mean, yeah, so feel free to purchase them anywhere. And so they're just shuffles, so you know, it's you know, it's not that worth to teach them, I guess. But amongst the things that I want you to sort of learn, or you know, if you want to do some more research into shuffles in general, there's the table Faro or the Riffle Faro. That's like more or less a Faro Shuffle in disguise of a Riffle Shuffle. I mean, Jason England made a tutorial on it on Theory 11. He calls it the perfect Riffle Shuffle, so you can go ahead and look at that. There's also the butt Faro, which is sort of like butting the decks together. It's not like butt as in like the anatomy part. So yeah, it's called a butt Faro, as in like butting the deck together. Yeah, so that's in revolutionary. I don't know why I can never say that word. Revolutionary card technique by Ed Merlin. There's also the Lifted Faro, which I'm actually not sure who it's by, but it's taught in Tools of the Technician by Jeremy Griffith. It's a 52 cards course, so you can go ahead and learn that. There's also the Hugh Scott Shuffle, which was unpublished. It was, as far as I know, created back in 1948, and more recently, Dan and Dave actually taught it on the trilogy, the third volume. Yeah, it's on the third volume, so you go ahead and learn that. And there's also the one-hand table shuffle. I believe it's by Di Vernon, and Dan and Dave also made a tutorial on that. So there's also the Wave Shuffle by Trouble.cards. I'll link a video to his tutorial. I can't really do it, so I'm not gonna teach it, and give him some views. He's a great cardist, so yeah, the Wave Shuffle. There's also the Open Faro by Huron Lowe. So yeah, he's a member of the Verts, and it's also a very cool Faro type of deal. So yeah, you can go ahead and check that out. But besides that, that's I need to film the performances for these shuffles, and yeah, that's about it. Hope you guys at least learned something, or at least you refined some stuff a bit. I still have a long way to go, so it was a learning process for me too. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Editing this down is going to be a pain, but by the time you see it, it's already going to be all edited down. So, that's a problem for future me. But yeah, so have fun with the shuffles. And yeah, I mean, it's just shuffles. So yeah, just have fun, right? Don't take it too seriously. And yeah, that's about it. And see you guys next video.